So we will be on our way. Are we live? Okay, thank you. Right on top. Perfect. So I just want to welcome everybody to the May meeting of Travel, Recreation, Wildlife and Cultural Resources Committee meeting. We have this long decorum speech, but mine is much shorter that says be nice or leave. So please act with respect and treat everyone as you would like to be treated. So we'll start with roll call. If you want to do the roll call, thank you.
Good morning, Ms. Chairman. Senator Baldwin, Senator Ellis, Senator Guru, Senator Jones, Representative Angelos, Representative Burkhart, Representative Byron, Representative Larson, Representative Singh, Representative Storer, Representative Western, Representative Winter, Co-Chairman Schuler, Chairman Newsom.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you.
Senator Ellis.
Senator Ellis should be
Or here.
And Senator Guru may be joining by Zoom as well. And I have no word on Representative Singh. I thought he was going to be here. And maybe he just is a little bit late. Okay, thank you. So I don't have much more for opening remarks other than be nice or leave. And then, so we'll start with the Office of Tourism. Director Schober, and you can introduce your team. Thank you.
Good morning, Madam Chairman, members of the committee. I'm Diane Schober, the Executive Director at the Wyoming Office of Tourism. And here with me today is Jim Wallenberg. Jim's our Senior Manager of Global Partnerships. James Schoon is our Director of Global Partnerships. And then with us also is Ryan Hauk, who is the CEO of the Park County Travel Council. So the local lodging tax board here in Park County. And what we're going to do today, Madam Chairman and members of the committee, is really take you through one of the lanes of our strategic endeavors. In your packet, you received a document that looks like this. This is our strategic plan for the upcoming biennium. And you'll see the 4 strategic lanes. Everything ladders up to the far left strategic lane, grow the statewide impact from Wyoming's visitor economy. And then we have the other 3 lanes, elevate our partners, champion the destination and the brand, and advance our organizational excellence. And rather than taking one meeting and just giving you a full large bit of information to digest on the overall agency, what we thought might be maybe some of the best ways to demonstrate the work that's happening through the Office of Tourism and how we're helping to build capacity across the entire state was to break up our presentations with you on some of these specific lanes and then share with you what's happening at a local level to deepen your understanding. So today we're going to focus on the lane of elevate our partners. A destination marketing organization such as ours is often known for promotion and advertising, but we're really much more than that. You have to manage a destination from a variety of levels, and we've been doing it since I've started. It was happening long before I became in this role, but with the additional funding through the statewide lodging tax, that really changed and elevated our ability to help manage destinations across the state of Wyoming and help our communities become visitor-ready communities. I'm going to turn it over to James and Jim as we get started. Bear with us as we get our presentation up. We've done a practice run, and we believe we have everything handled, but you know, best laid plans, right? So hang on just one second with us. Oh, I guess I should offer up first, Madam Chairman and members of the committee. Are there any questions of me before we get started?
Doesn't look like it. I think we're good. Thank you. I guess we do have a question. Representative Western.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Director, I was wondering, maybe, obviously I think a lot of credit goes to this committee and to the co-chairs for getting our that trust fund set up. Maybe if you could just give us an update on kind of where that's at. I know obviously there's the whole rulemaking process and all that stuff. So if you wouldn't mind, maybe just bring us up to speed, that'd be great.
Director Schober.
Madam Chairwoman and Representative Western, I would have to defer more appropriately to my colleagues from State Parks and Cultural Resources. Dave Glenn and Patrick Harrington are overseeing that. I don't know if they're up on the agenda today or if it's tomorrow that they're coming in, but they would be able to answer that. I can tell you that in terms of the funding, the first and initial 6 million has already been transferred into an account. We got the notice through the state auditor's office about a year ago, right after the beginning of this fiscal year. And then after July 1st, there'll be another transfer of 6 million out of the special projects and reserve account that will go into this trust fund account. And so I believe the rulemaking process is all underway. I know they're on the fast track to get it done, but I really, I would be just guessing and estimating if I were to share with you where they were in the process.
So if you want to continue, Jim.
Absolutely, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Good morning. Like Diane mentioned, my name is Jim Wallenberg. I am the Global Partnerships Senior Manager with the Office of Tourism. And again, as Diane mentioned, today we are going to be discussing kind of laying out, elevating our partners. Potentially. Okay, now we're going.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is going to be that
enter button.
enter, okay. This will be that lane in that strategic clarity document. This is our mission statement. Our office is responsible for promoting our state as an attractive travel destination and enhancing its public image as a dynamic place to live and work. Through the impact of travel, we strengthen the economy, economic position, and provide opportunity for the people in our local communities. Again, I believe this is before everyone on the committee. And then this is kind of where we're gonna kick things off. So this map, you can see all the various dots well spread out throughout the state, and they all kind of fall within these topics that are to the left there. Destination development, which James will discuss here later in the presentation, is one big component. Another is T-Rex outreach, which that is short for tourism resource expansion. That's a way for our office to kind of get out into the communities and see how they're promoting themselves. If they have questions for our office, we can bring it back from the Global Partnerships team to the rest of the office and discuss that amongst the various lanes, whether it's media, whether it's domestic, whoever it may be. And it's really a better way for us to promote these local destinations. FAM trips is another big component that is short for familiarization tours, which I will discuss in a few slides from now. But that's a way to kind of get firsthand experience for travel agents, tour operators, media, whoever it may be, to get that firsthand experience of the communities so they really can witness what it is when folks are coming. Themed itineraries, those can range from hiking, wildlife, brewery tours, just kind of various of those themes that make kind of Wyoming unique and special. And then Brand USA is another slide that I will talk about, but they are essentially the Wyoming Office of Tourism for the entire United States. So like-minded brand partners to extend our marketing effectiveness. Our office works with these other state agencies and organizations very closely, whether it is through monthly calls, quarterly calls, just email back and forth on a day-to-day basis. We do this basically so that there's open communication. We know that folks aren't kind of duplicating efforts amongst the state organizations. And then it's just a way to kind of strengthen the relationships between all these organizations, make sure everyone's on the same page, make sure everyone knows what's going on. We also link out through our Wonder Map on our website through travelwyoming.com to all these organizations. So through those clickouts, we're sitting at just over 40,000 clickouts. So it's nice that that resource is there when folks are coming to our site, travelwyoming.com. If they are curious about something specific to parks or outdoor rec or YDOT, how do you get around the state? They can click right out to that. It's a nice resource that they don't have to kind of research something online. Everything's right there on our website for them to click out to. Going together where we can't go alone. This is kind of the focus of our co-op efforts. So we offer co-ops to our partners as a way for them to leverage their dollars and really get more bang for their buck. A lot of times it's opportunities that they might not otherwise have without these co-op opportunities that our office offers. And so these are really just those outlets to get them greater exposure. They can range from Cowboy Channel, our spring marketing co-ops, Expedia, Travel Zoo. At any given time, we probably have half a dozen to a dozen opportunities that folks can buy into. And again, it's just a way to leverage those dollars. You can see from the numbers here, there's some massive numbers here that partners may otherwise not have the opportunity to get those reach, get those views, get those impressions. And you can see between the top one kind of discusses that or showcases that spring marketing co-ops. We had 15 partners participating in that one. And then the lower one represents the ones like Expedia, Travel Zoo, Cowboy Channel. We had 15 partners participating in that. So it's definitely a benefit. We love seeing those numbers being so high. And yeah, we're just eager and excited to keep offering those co-op opportunities to our partners around the state. These are just a few examples of the co-ops. It really helps these partners achieve their own marketing objectives. So you can see they're all kind of branded for that particular community. Really gives a nice showcase of what those communities are looking to offer. And the partnerships are really just kind of a broad plan that the local communities can buy into. And again, just kind of get their word out, get their messaging out to a lot more kind of outlets and entities than they may not otherwise be able to. Our media missions, these are some missions that we've been doing the past few years. We really try to have these be very poignant in where we go, kind of what we offer. So this year we had Los Angeles and New York as our two main media missions. In Los Angeles, the focus was around kind of the fashion and the creators of our state. So we had Cheyenne, Jim Walter was in attendance for this one with Visit Cheyenne, Lexi Garrett with Alexis Drake, and Haley Fitzgerald out of Jackson. And these folks were able to showcase their abilities, their creativity, their product with media members in LA. And then in New York, it was a little something different than we've done in the past. It was basically a stadium takeover of Citi Field. That's where the New York Mets play. For those that don't know, Brandon Nimmo is a Cheyenne native. He is on the New York Mets. He's the gentleman in the middle there. He was kind enough to meet with our folks and sit down with the folks that came out there. And for that mission was Sean Parker with Sheridan, Janessa Meredith in Sweetwater County, and Rick Honinghausen with Zinterra in Yellowstone National Park. So we had some great exposure. We had a lot of media members at both of these events, but it's just a way to kind of get our office, get Wyoming out there to the masses in kind of a different and unique way. And so FAMs, I mentioned these earlier, again, short for familiarization tour. These are ways for travel agents, media members, tour operators to come out to our state, experience what Wyoming has to offer, experience the various communities, the scenic byways, the local shops, the adventures that you can do. And then they take that back to, for kind of the trade side of things, they take that back to their offices and hopefully create some itineraries, create some product to get Wyoming as part of their tours. From the media side, we're hoping to get some great exposure, some articles that will branch out to, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of readers, subscribers. But it's really that way. So folks get here, they experience it. You can talk to someone as much as you want. You can show them pictures as much as you want. But when they get here on the ground, get that full experience, that's kind of where their passion comes from. And that's when they start pushing it on their clients, their partners, their media team. So it's a great way to get that exposure for these local communities that support the FAMs and that we take them around the state too. This year we had between media and trade right around 40 total, 30 total FAMs, which was about 70 people split between all those. Some are larger groups like you could see in the pictures. Some might be one or two media members. But again, it's just a great way for them to get on the ground, see what Wyoming has to offer. And then cowboy marketing. This is a big piece for us. There are rodeos all throughout the summer that hit almost every community in the state, if not every community. And I'm going to read off the names because I haven't memorized them. So apologies for that. But so on Team Wyoming for 2024, we have Cole Reiner out of Buffalo. We have Seth Hardwick out of Ranchester, Chet Johnson out of Buffalo, Brody Kress out of Hillsdale, Tanner Butner out of Daniel, Dusty Tuckness out of Meeteetse, and Nate Justice out of Douglas. So great team. We're proud to sponsor the team. We love seeing their results. We love when they succeed. And then the salute to Team Wyoming during NFR is a huge event for us. Our board comes out, various members of just the state come out to support these guys. So it's a great part of what we do. We're very proud of the Team Wyoming and the cowboy marketing efforts that we do. And yeah, it's just another way to kind of spread that Wyoming imagery, the messaging on a grander scale. And with that, I will kick it over to Mr. James Schoon, and he will take you through some international pieces and domestic development pieces.
Great, thank you. Madam Chairman, members of the committee, thank you so much for having us this morning. I am going to take you through the next couple of programs that we work with to elevate our partners across the state. The first one that we're going to talk about is reestablishing the international marketing endeavors. In 2019, we actually had record numbers of international visitors coming to the United States as well as Wyoming. Obviously, we had a few hiccups with COVID. Borders were shut down. People actually reestablished their missions in the international markets. They let teams go for their sales teams. They have all new folks in there. So our goal right now is to go and meet with these tour operators or travel trade. I will explain. Travel trade is actually tour operators or travel agents. These are the folks that actually put together itineraries and they'll take them back and sell those to consumers. So we're reaching it at the very top of the funnel, and those go back through the tour operators, travel agents, and down to the consumers so they can actually buy Wyoming product. One of the ways that we accomplish this is through direct sales opportunities. If you take a look at the screen, these are going to be some of the trade shows that we do throughout the year. We've actually garnered 474 leads from these shows over the past year. While we realize that the international market isn't on the top of everyone in the state's list, we do offer that opportunity for folks that are interested in international to buy in on different programs, which I'll talk about here in a minute. But we also are able to promote some of those smaller mom and pop hotels, some of the smaller ranches, lesser known parts of the state. Maybe somebody that doesn't have the means to participate in the international market. We'll take the lead on that and still direct business to their business. I will point out the travel trade, when you look at it for the United States, a lot of people use more of an OTA approach or direct booking approach. So OTA is online travel agency. So if you've ever worked with Expedia or Travelocity, those are going to be how most people do the bookings. The international markets are a little bit different. There's insurances that go along with it. If you go with a travel agent, you walk in and you buy a tour to come to Wyoming. If you get here and there's something that's amiss, say there's a pool that's broken or there's an activity that didn't happen, you can go back and actually collect all of that insurance money to make yourself whole again. So there's a lot of insurances. This is still the way that it's done in the international markets. One of the programs that we work with that garners a ton of international business is going to be through the Great American West Partnership. Some of you may have heard of this before. It's a 5-state consortium made up of Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, South Dakota, and North Dakota. And through this partnership, we're actually able to work within the 7 markets that you see below. I know Australia is cut off on there. It's Australia, Benelux, France, Germany, Italy, Nordic, and the UK. The 3 biggest that we work with in those markets are going to be the UK, Germany, and France. Through this partnership, this actually allows us to pay 1/5 of the cost for this. We realize when the international visitors come over, they want to see South Dakota. They want to go to Mount Rushmore. They want to go to Yellowstone. They want to go to Glacier. There's multiple things. It's very rare that international folks will come over and just do one state. So it makes sense to pool our marketing dollars. It gives us more lift in those markets. It gives our partners more of an opportunity. Through this partnership, we do have in-market representation in those. These are going to be folks that are on the ground every day, selling the region, selling Wyoming. They're talking to the travel trade side of things, trying to get new product on the shelf, but they're also talking to media, trying to get folks to come over on the fam trips, which Jim mentioned, trying to get stories written about us to go directly to the consumers that are doing the actual bookings.
James,
Yes.
can you tell us what Benelux is?
Yes, Madam Chairman, members of the committee, Benelux is Belgium, Luxembourg, and Netherlands. Sorry about that. The acronyms.
An acronym.
Exactly. One of the things that also comes out of the Great American West Partnership is that we put on a regional trade show every year. It rotates around each of the states. So we get it every 5th year. Unfortunately, with COVID, we had to wait 7 years to get it. But this year we held it in Casper, Wyoming. So we have those in-market reps go out and get their 5 targeted international buyers to come to the trade show. And then partners can buy in. The cost to do this is just over $600, where a show of this caliber normally costs between $1,500 to $3,000. And it's not necessarily in the region, so there's flights involved, there's hotels involved. So to have it within the region, have it dedicated tour operators and travel agents that want to know specifically about this region is one of a kind, really. We think it's the best that we can offer. When they meet with these folks, they know that they're meeting with somebody from Wyoming. They want to build that product out. When you go to another trade show, you may get 15 appointments. 6 of those might be relevant. 6 of them might just be a sit down and they just want to find out a little bit more information. All 40 to 45 of these folks are available. You meet with every tour operator at the show. So any of the partners that go meet with 40 tour operators. They talk about their product and in the hopes that they will put their product in the catalog to go back and be sold to the consumers. This is actually the international roundup recap. I have a quick video for you. I will point out that when you do come over as a tour operator, one of the perks is that you actually get a buckle and you're inducted into what's called the Buckle Club, and you actually get a special cowboy name. So for instance, we have Diane, there's a new sheriff in town, Schober, that was given to her when she first started, but you'll see that in the video as well.
And James, Howl at the Moon Schoon. So just to
I
give you a
tried to
little
avoid that
local
one.
flavor.
So that was just a little recap. I know the box kind of blocked a little bit of the writing on there. Apologize on that. Just so you know, Governor Gordon's actually name was Governor Mark Merlin 33 Gordon into the Cowboy Club after his ranch and the 33rd governor. So yeah, so at International Roundup, most of the folks that you saw on that were going to be international buyers. We actually had 28 Wyoming participants this year. So we had 28 businesses that went along with us and got to meet with all 45 of the tour operators that you saw in the video. A couple of other markets that we work in outside of the Great American West program are going to be Canada, Mexico, and Japan. We'll start with Japan. In late 1980s and 90s, we actually had an in-market representative in the Japanese market. We've dialed that back a little bit. Currently, we're doing a small partnership with South Dakota, so we can still do newsletters throughout the year. We can still do educational trainings with those tour operators, and we're still actively basically trying to secure marketing effort or secure business from the Japanese market. Canada and Mexico, those are two of the different markets. They're very similar to the domestic market. Where I mentioned the OTAs, the online travel agencies earlier, and direct bookings, Canada and Mexico do a lot of direct bookings. They still have a strong trade representation, but a lot of them will do individual direct bookings to hotels and activities. So we actually have another partnership that I'll talk about in just a second, but we have been able to work with different programs down there. In the past, we work with CAA, which is their version of the AAA here in the United States. We've also worked with the Alberta Motor Coach Association, trying to garner business through that method as well. But one of the partnerships that we work with is actually Brand USA, and Jim mentioned it earlier. This is the marketing arm for the entire United States. So they are to us as the state as we are to the partners of Wyoming. They offer us dollar matches on different programs. They buy down direct to consumer marketing campaigns for us. We're able to use their social channels, as well as they built out a great microsite for the state of Wyoming that allows our partners to also have microsites on the Brand USA website as well. It's translated into 11 different languages. You're able to put video content and obviously itineraries on there as well. This is some of the success that we've had with Brand USA over the years. The last year, I should say. So as I mentioned, we're able to use the different channels that Brand USA offers. One of them that is seeing the most traction is their online TV channel, basically. We came up with a concept called Howdy Neighbor. We heard from a lot of tour operators that they loved our promotional videos. They said, the scenery is fantastic. We really want to send our folks there, but we want to give them an idea of what it would actually be like to be in these communities. So the concept came up for Howdy Neighbor, where two guides, one of them being right here, go out to different communities. They meet with local experts. They actually do the activities. They eat at the restaurants. They stay at the hotels. This first one was produced 2 years ago, and we're actually moving into the second round of that this summer. That's going to focus on 5 new episodes around Sublette County, Sheridan County, Hot Springs County, Natrona County, and Johnson County. Just to show you a quick breakdown of all of our international markets and how the percentages break down on our marketing spend. You can see our top 3 are on there: Germany, France, in the UK. Those ones don't change a whole lot. Depending on sales missions and marketing opportunities, they may fluctuate a little bit. So as you see on this one, Italy's a little stronger. That one could fluctuate quite a bit. International marketing assets, this is the work that we do with Brand USA. This is also producing videos and content, anything that focuses on multiple markets. So that's a huge chunk at 20% as well. Domestic motor coach, this still plays a very vital role for the state of Wyoming. I have some stats that I'll read for you. Jim mentioned that we've done quite a few FAM tours. A lot of partners still focus on that motor coaching group travel. But we do have some stats for you from the 2023 Economic Impact Report. 2,900 tours across Wyoming, 90 plus tour operators selling Wyoming, 54,000 room nights in 19 communities, and with $145 million plus impact on the state of Wyoming. So still very viable to the state. And then we'll go into the next program called Destination Development. This has been a strategic initiative for Wyoming for quite some time. Over 20 plus years, we've been working on elevating our partners, trying to get them visitor ready, trying to give them the pieces that they need to be successful. And you can see starting back in 2004 and probably before this, but 2004, we went out and actually did an assessment of what the different opportunities would be in the communities. We met with local leaders, we gave feedback, and then we put together different programs to try to make the partners successful going forward. We did in 2019, we launched Why Best, which Jim talked a little bit about, going around the state, basically meeting with all those leaders again, getting everybody in the room and putting together strategic plans. This was a huge piece. Having those strategic plans in place, knowing what the future is going to look like, was that a major step for us. And then we did have in 2022, we had the CARES funds that we had to distribute for, unfortunately, for COVID. So we found out working through local lodging tax boards, municipal and joint power boards, that was the easiest way for us to do this distribution of funds, which we did incorporate into the Destination Development Program. So in 2023, it was approved by the legislature for a $5 million, basically added to our budget, that we would have a sustainable funding mechanism that we could distribute out through the Destination Development Program to help our partners actually achieve those strategic document or strategic plans that they built out. Excuse me. In order to partner in the Destination Development Program, a local lodging tax must be run. Basically, it must be a local lodging tax or a municipal or county board. They must have completed the Wyoming Best program or a similar program that will build out that strategic plan. They need to attend the governor's conference that we host every year on tourism or Fall Summit. These are two areas that our office puts together. It's really an update on trends across the market. We want them to stay active and understand that they may need to fluctuate a little bit on their strategic plans. And then they need to stay active in all of the WAC communications through emails and newsletters throughout the year. So when we looked at this, we realized this wasn't going to be a one size fits all. Everybody has a little bit different need. So Uinta County is going to be a little bit different than Carbon County or Teton County. They're all going to have different needs and show up to the table with a little bit different what they can offer. So when you look at the tiers, we have tier 1 that when you look at it for the local lodging tax collections, it's over $1.5 million in under 22 or over 2,200 tourism related jobs. Tier 2 is going to be 500,000 to 1.5 million with 900 to 2,200 tourism related jobs. And tier 3 is going to be under 500,000 and under 900 tourism related jobs. There are actually 4 people in tier 1, 5 people in tier 2, and 14 people in tier 3. This will give you just a breakdown of the different counties on how much or how many jobs in the 3-year average that they have. The colors, don't mind those. Those are actually for some other regional tracking that we do, but I'll give you a second just to take a look at those. As we mentioned, or as I mentioned, we broke it down into the 3-tiered system. Tier 1, this is going to be more of our established partners. When we look at them, they're fully staffed. They've been working off a strategic plan for quite some time. They may have different events throughout the year that they're trying to enhance or bring new events in. Tier 2, this is where we think that we can make the biggest push right off the bat. These are partners right on the cusp of tier 1. They have some pieces that we can help them out with built straight out of their strategic plans. And then tier 3, this is going to be more of the base level, folks that may need staffing help to pass out and distribute materials throughout the year, do follow-up. Maybe they need wayfinding or websites. Those folks are also at the base level. So as I mentioned, once we distributed those funds, they all had different strategic plans and they all took them in different directions. It was kind of amazing. It's what some people came up with. So just to show you on the photos, and then I have a quick video from Sweetwater County, but you'll see that trains there. That's actually going to be a tier 1 destination down in Cheyenne. They actually put trains in to help enhance the visitor experience built around the depot, as well as that train history that Cheyenne has to offer. On the top right, you'll see that's a tier 3 that's over in Buffalo. They wanted to immerse everyone in their outlaw history. So they built or they put up banners downtown. So you really have that outlaw feel as you walk around. You can't see it very well, but that one on the bottom left is actually a locker room. And I know that seems a little odd. This is where it gets creative, but Casper, as we know, works very hard to get sporting events to come in throughout the year. Up to this point, they really needed to do a remodel of their current facilities. Without that, they were unable to get people to come in for the different sporting events. Some places they weren't even able to apply due to the quality that they were offering. So once they were able to do this, this is going to help them get business year round through sporting events and fill those hotels and fill those restaurants. In the center there, that's actually Burgess Junction. Just to give you an idea of what a tier 2 would look like. This was done just outside of Sheridan. They actually funded an employee to come and work the center. They can pass out this, they can distribute materials there throughout the summer, show them this is what you're missing. Stay a little bit longer. Here's what we have. So that definitely adds to the visitor experience as they drive across the Bighorns. I'll show you a quick video from Janessa Meredith from Sweetwater County.
I'm Janessa Meredith, and I'm the CEO of Sweetwater County Travel and Tourism. And we have been thrilled to receive destination development funding through the Wyoming Office of Tourism to use for wayfinding in the city of Rock Springs. Wayfinding is important to any destination. Not only does it help new residents orient themselves and become familiar with the area attractions, it helps visitors to do the same thing. And we know when a visitor comes to our area, they spend on average $122 per day in Sweetwater County. So if we can give them information about local attractions through the wayfinding signage, we can help them extend their stay in Sweetwater County and spend more money in local businesses. Historically, Sweetwater County Travel and Tourism has partnered with the city of Rock Springs to implement a wayfinding system throughout the city. Travel and Tourism paid for the design, and the city of Rock Springs paid for fabrication and installation. Unfortunately, due to budget constraints, the city wasn't able to fabricate and install signs that would hold up to the elements for decades. That's why this funding is so critical. It's hard to find funding to fund wayfinding projects, and the destination development funding can be used for that, and we are thrilled to be able to update that system. Again, thank you so much for the opportunity to share this project with you. Those funds are critical to the tourism market in Sweetwater County and to the future of visitation to our area. And we really appreciate the opportunity to be able to receive those funds. If you have any questions on what we're doing with them or how important they are to Sweetwater County, please reach out to me at 307-382-2538 or shoot me an email at jmeredith@tourwyoming.com.
So going forward, we are finishing out the fiscal year 24 distribution. Currently we're getting in the responses, finding out how people spent the money, how they moved the needle, if they're reverting any funds. We're going through that process right now and reevaluating the whole process overall. We're trying to get everything in place so we can let everybody know which tier they're going into, what they're able to apply for going forward, and get that money distributed, but by July 1 for fiscal year 25 and 26 going forward. So with that, Madam Chairman, I would like to open it up to any questions that you may, or the committee may have.
Questions from the committee?
Madam Chairman. Director, I'm sorry, what was your,
Representative Singh.
Director, what was your last name? I'm sorry.
Madam Chairman, Representative Singh, my last name is Schoon.
Schoon, Director Schoon. Earlier you had mentioned that in order to travel to Wyoming from the international market, that people would need to obtain special insurance to travel here. Are there any particular difficulties that folks from the international markets are having in getting that insurance?
Mr. Schoon.
Madam Chairman, Representative Singh, I actually may have misspoke on that. It's actually an insurance that they choose to get. It's given to them if they go through a travel agent. It's through the government. So if they go through a travel agent, they automatically have it. They don't need to obtain it. It's already part of the deal when they go through the government or through the travel agent, excuse me.
Do you have a follow-up?
Yes, Madam Chairman. So, Director, are there any factors to the way that we do things here in Wyoming that are that would potentially increase the cost of that insurance, or is Wyoming a relatively safe place to travel to?
Mr. Schoon.
Madam Chairman, Representative Singh, to my knowledge, I haven't heard anything from the tour operators. And when I speak, I should mention, I'm mainly talking about the European markets. Those are going to be the core markets that mentioned earlier, those 7 destinations that we work with: the UK, Germany, France, Italy, Benelux, Nordics, and Australia. From what I've heard from tour operators and travel agents that are currently working with the product, it's very safe. They have the automatically built-in insurance, but outside of that, there hasn't been a need that I've heard of to this point.
Follow up.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. No.
Thank you. Any other questions? Co-Chairman Schuler.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'm curious to know how our visitation has increased in the last couple of years after post-COVID and also with the flooding. So it'd be nice to know just numbers, not only just from Teton County, but statewide, how we are in the last couple of years. If you could give us some of those.
Who wants to take that? Director Ober.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, Madam Co-Chairman. The overall visitation, including both international and domestic, and Wyoming folks traveling around the state, has remained relatively flat year to year, which actually is good in the respect that the visitor spend is up substantially. And so our increase in visitors from calendar year 22 to calendar year 23 was only an increase of 1.7%, but yet the increase in the spend, I don't have the number right in front of me, but it was in the double digits. And so, what we're getting is quality. I'm sure that some of that is equated to pricing too. But when you grow tourism in a variety of ways by increasing the number of visitors, but what really matters the most is increasing that per spend, the visitor spend. And that's the direction that for managing destinations where they may feel a little bit pinched at times, that value of that visitor is the most important. I'll send you the exact amount of increases so that you have it. I'll send it to the entire committee.
Any follow-up?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yeah, just another thing. I'm interested in a lot of your programs. The Brand USA is interesting to me, but how do you intend to increase just the branding of just our own state with some of the programs that you have?
Director Schober.
Thank you, Chairman Newsom, Co-Chairman Schuler. We're actually not expanding the brand. The brand sits in Wyoming. That is the brand. How we talk about the brand, how we share content in ways in which a visitor can experience the brand, that's forever evolving. And as James and Jim both shared with you through our elevating our partners, that really is partnerships with folks all across the state. Niobrara County, Teton County, Park County right here. In fact, that's why Ryan's here with us this morning, just to share a little bit about what they're doing and buying into some of these partnerships. But as we embrace Wyoming as being the last bastion of the West and this state with all these beautiful vistas, we're also really communicating about responsible travel, which we started long before COVID, but then that really ramped up, and we have partnerships in our communication with a lot of other state agencies, predominantly Wyoming Game and Fish, state parks and cultural resources, but we work closely with our federal partners too. So I think the evolution of the brand will be more in the evolution of the content and continuing to bring to life Wyomingites who share their stories and how a visitor could experience what they're doing to make their work and their life here in Wyoming possible in a way that a visitor could enjoy. It's very common that residents and visitors enjoy the same things. And so that really is the focus of advancing the brand forward.
Follow-up.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Just one more. I just want to, more of a comment more than anything else. I just think about when I first came in the legislature, it appeared as though, we spent a lot of time focusing on, of course, our number one, Teton County, nothing against that. We get a lot of money from the folks coming in to visit Teton County, but I just really think that, the Office of Tourism has done a remarkable job in the years that I've been in the legislature, marketing the rest of the state and, talking about all of the wonderful things that everybody has to offer. I think you guys have done a great job, and I just wanted to commend you for your efforts.
Director Schober?
Uh,
Wouldn't you agree?
Chairman Newsom, absolutely. Thank you, Co-Chairman Schuler. We appreciate that. It's certainly what we're attempting to do.
Okay, so any other questions? No, okay, so if you want to carry on.
Madam Chairman, I'm going to, we'll turn this over to one of our partners, Ryan Hauk, but please allow Diane Schober, the Director of AV, to change this up. And that should really scare all of you if I am responsible for the audio visual components of what is happening. Okay, I'm going to share my screen again with Ryan's presentation. Ryan, hold on a second here, and we'll get this for you. That down to Ryan. And yeah, and then just introduce yourself.
Mr. Hauk.
Madam Chair, committee members, thank you guys so much for having me. My name is Ryan Hauk. I'm the Executive Director for the Park County Travel Council, otherwise known as Cody Yellowstone. Thank you all so much for having me. And for those of you that aren't from this area, welcome to Cody. What a beautiful day here in May. It could have been, obviously, as you guys know, a blizzard out there. So what a lovely day we're getting here. So yeah, excited to talk to you guys a little bit about the DDF program and really how it affected our organization and what we were able to do with those dollars for our destination. And then at the end, I'll touch on a little bit about some of the partnerships that we partake in with the Wyoming Office of Tourism, which could be really anything from matching dollars for our digital marketing efforts all the way to international sales and media missions as well. Before we really start diving into the DDF program, I wanted to kind of give you guys a lay of the land about what tourism means for Park County and kind of our role and what we really focus on as the Park County Travel Council. So we are the second largest tourist destination for the state of Wyoming. As you mentioned, Teton County is #1, but we are a strong #2. But for our county, tourism really is by far and away our #1 industry. It's our #1 employer, our #1 economic driver, and really anybody from frontline staff members all the way to people that aren't even directly affected by tourism in Park County. We all really bank on having successful tourism seasons every single year, year after year after year. The infrastructure that we have here, the majority of that is really funded by the tourism dollar as well. So when we put together our marketing and our sales plans, we're not just going for a sheer number of people. We're going for that right type of traveler, the one that's looking to spend multiple nights here, the one that's looking to buy the steak, not the sandwich, right? Looking to spend some money all throughout our destination. So with the DDF program here, and I should have started off with this as well. Diane really is not just a leader for the state, but also a leader for tourism for the country. I mean, she is an amazing person and really has some great ideas. And the DDF fund is one of those forward-thinking ideas that really has changed what we're able to do out of our office. So #1, Scoon mentioned this earlier. We were able to execute James, not Scoon. Sorry about that, Scoon. James. But we were able to execute our strategic plan that we did back a couple of years ago with Berkeley Young in partnership with the state. And of course, that strategic plan aligns perfectly with what we want to do as a destination. And it really is a great roadmap for the way the board wants us to move forward for the next few years. But it also closely aligns with what Diane does at the state level as well. So that way we know what each other are doing, what our end goals are. We kind of move in unison together, making sure our marketing plans kind of complement each other. We're also to go after new opportunities that were otherwise unavailable from our office. And I'll kind of touch on that later on in this slideshow as well. For the first time ever, we were able to provide new product and experiences for travelers. We could actually go after capital improvements and infrastructure and things that will really help, develop longer stays in our destination. And then lastly, we were able to produce solutions for our destination immediately. This is not some elongated grant process. This was not us fighting for, dollars for different things. This is something that we knew what we were going to get. We knew when we were going to get it. And as long as it fit within our strategic plan, and it was approved by the AG's office and WAT, we knew that we could put these dollars into the destination immediately. Sorry, Sandy, Madam Chairperson.
It's okay. So just so you know, I served on Ryan's board for many years. And just for the information of the committee, lodging tax dollars statutorily can only be spent on marketing of a destination. They cannot be spent on capital improvements. And so this destination development money can be spent on capital improvements, which is a real boon to what a destination can do outside of that scope of marketing dollars. So that's just a little clarification on why these funds are so important to our partners.
And Madam Chairperson, Newswoman served on my board for a number of years, and she was part of our DDF program committee as well. So she was an integral part in putting together some of these programs. So thank you to you for helping us with everything. So some of the first stuff that we invested in were what we called our community projects. These were really projects that were headed by community partners throughout our destination. We were looking for projects that were basically shovel ready, that have already started and could be finished by the end of the fiscal year, or could be started and still be finished by the end of this fiscal year. So these community members had already, done that front end lay work for us, had already done the research, and were ready to roll. They just needed some dollars to kind of take them across the finish line. So one of the first things that we invested in were new facilities at Outlaw Trail System. So it sounds a little strange to be so excited about 2 toilets at the beginning of a trailhead, especially in front of a group like yourselves. But really, this was the last piece of the puzzle for us to actually go after mountain biking events and other outdoor recreation events as well. Outlaw Trail System started out as a trail system that was kind of just pickaxed by some passionate locals. But today it's gone through all the necessary NEPA studies. They just got some grant funding to build another 15 miles worth of trail out there. They got another grant to go after some signage as well. But once again, that last remaining piece of the puzzle was having facilities out there at the trailhead. And now we can officially go after some really cool outdoor recreation events that will potentially bring, 200 to 400 enthusiasts out to our area. The other thing we did is we invested in one of our more popular outdoor recreation events called Fistful of Dirt. This is actually a gravel bike race that has options at 40 miles, 60 miles, and for the really crazy people, 100-mile races. This has always been ran by a local born and bred, Janie Curtis, and she does a phenomenal job. And she's always brought in about 100 to 200 people every single year. But it just got to that point where it really needed kind of a facelift and more of a professional look to it. To really bring it to that next level. So this last year before the event started, we were able to get her some branded canopy kits, a beautiful professional looking Codioso metal arch, some signage and flagging that works well for this event, as well as some other outdoor recreation events. It went over great. And this year she actually is pacing well above what she saw last year. So hopefully we'll be more in about that 300 person range. And it'll be exciting to see how this event grows for years to come. The other community project that we moved forward with was the development of Sleeping Giant zipline and ski area. When it comes to tourism for us, we do have some of the highest highs in the state as far as collection of lodging tax and sales tax. And we are, like I mentioned, the second largest tourist destination for the state. But we also see some of the lowest lows in the state, specifically in the wintertime, where we have a lot of our front-facing attractions closed down. We even have hotels closed down. And really our biggest thing that we have in the wintertime is the Sleeping Giant ski area. So when we had some shovel-ready projects to partner with Nick Piazza, who owns Sleeping Giant, it was a no-brainer to move forward with some of those. So the first one was a new maintenance road for him, which is exactly like it sounds. It was a maintenance road that gets him access to his zip line, as well as the lifts for the ski area. But it also allowed for some new trail development for him as well. So now there's some new tree runs in there, some higher elevation runs as well, and just a new product for people to enjoy over at Sleeping Giant. We also moved forward with a tubing park for him. We are by far and away considered the best option for families to stay at as far as the gateway towns throughout Yellowstone. Producing product that still aligns with that demographic that enjoys our destination, and hopefully encourage some longer stays as well by developing something like a brand new tubing park, I think will align really nicely with what we already have going on. These are both done and ready to roll, and we'll see how they go for this first winter with them being installed. The last few community projects that we moved forward with was with the town of Meeteetse. Town of Meeteetse is only a town of about 300 people total, but they run about 12 to 18 events every single year, including our largest event in the wintertime, which is the ice fishing event that they do for us. So to really help them run events more effectively and more efficiently, we did some upgrades for them in their park, as well as throughout their downtown, to hopefully be able to capture more travelers and be able to handle larger size events in their downtown. For the city of Powell, they've had a mural on their bean mill for decades. And it's gotten pretty faded away. It also features a man that's never actually even stepped foot in Powell, John Wesley Powell. And so they wanted to change it up. They wanted to have a signature spot that would be, worth the drive out there to see, or at least worth a stop on their way to Cody or Yellowstone. And so they commissioned out with a local artist, and it is something completely different. It's bright, it's beautiful. It's a really cool scenic shot of Heart Mountain. This should be up and available to see in daytime and nighttime, hopefully by the end of this month or beginning of next month as well. So excited for them to see how that one comes together. And then Heart Mountain Wyoming Foundation. So it's the Heart Mountain World War II Interpretive Center. This is an attraction and museum that's actually now a Smithsonian affiliate museum that's right between Cody and Powell. Obviously, they've already existed for years, but they have started the process of restoring the Heart Mountain Root Cellar, which is a fantastic new attraction that will be there at their facility. This root cellar used to hold, food and supplies and medical supplies and different things like that during the time it was an internment camp from 1940 to 1943. And what this will look like when it's all finished is you'll walk in one end, and then through those pillars, there'll be video screens on both sides that will talk about what that looked like and kind of what that situation was. You'll walk out the other end. There'll be more stuff waiting for you on the other side. But this is really going to help them diversify their product. Hopefully getting, new types of trailers in there, but it also is going to encourage some longer stays, giving them the opportunity to kind of tell that story that they, is so important for their area. Oops, sorry about that. All of these projects, all these community projects, we could not have done without the destination development funds. Either they're outside the scope of what we're able to do with our normal lodging tax, or honestly, they're just too expensive. And it would have affected our sales and marketing plan way too much. So we also took on some projects that were more in-house. The first one is Bears in the Basin. Those beautiful children are mine. Made them all by myself, and I love those little suckers. But anyways, they are a big part of the marketing plan as well with Bears in the Basin. So once again, to be more towards that family-focused demographic here. So this is a family-focused search and find scavenger hunt with 19 bronze sculptures all across the county. So once again, showing love to our gateway towns as well with Powell and Meeteetse. So there's 9 bears in Cody, and that's the one that you're seeing right there on the screen. His name is Buffalo Bear Cody. The one in Powell is Farmer Growl, and he has a shovel and a sugar beet, paying homage to the ag community, of course, all throughout Powell. And the last one are the 4 bears that are Meeteetse, which is Amelia Bearhart, which of course pays homage to Amelia Earhart and all her ties to Meeteetse. So these bears are set at both ends of all the downtowns, with obviously other bears filling in kind of the middle. And we're really hoping that this encourages exploration of our downtowns and kind of get them off the beaten path a little bit as well. Eventually hoping to produce some longer stays as well with that family demographic. Our biggest spend that we had this year is same with Janessa out of Rock Springs there, Sweetwater County, was our wayfinding signage program. We are definitely a tourism ready destination, but one thing that we were lacking heavily in was wayfinding signage. And just like Janessa mentioned, there's not a lot of grants out there for us to go after to pursue a project like this. So the DDF program was really a huge breath of fresh air that we could use these dollars right away and put in place a plan to put some signage all across the county. So the first thing we want to do is make sure it had a beautiful, cohesive look. So that way people knew that they were in Park County, whether they're Meeteetse or Powell or Cody. So all these signs look the exact same, except for the top part that has where they're at, City of Powell, Meeteetse or Cody, and then the crest at the top as well. We wanted to highlight, different recreational opportunities, especially with how much we've invested in those over the last few years. So stuff like Kerwin Ghost Town, Sunshine Reservoir, Beck Lake, Outlaw Trail System, stuff like that. We wanted to highlight businesses off the main street. So there'll be business signs throughout the downtown of Cody that really highlights the businesses that are on the cross streets, as well as the parallel streets to Sheridan on Beck and Rumsey. And then we also wanted to point people to lesser known attractions as well, really, getting people moving around our downtowns and seeing what we have going on. So the biggest thing for signage, Janessa mentioned a couple of things there. I always feel like signage also really increases your destination sentiment as well. When people feel like they know where they're going and how to get around, they just have a better feeling about your destination. They talk highly about, last time they were there. They also, it makes them want to come back for repeat travel as well. And then obviously this serves residents and visitors alike as well. So we're excited to see this done. These signs should be all in. I think by the middle of June, we should be done with phase 1, and we'll start on phase 2 with the next round of destination development funds. We also opened up an official film commission office. And for this was really about diversifying our tourism economy. We don't have a Little America like Cheyenne does. We don't have an event center like Casper does. And so really going after those meetings, conventions, conferences, sporting events, stuff like that really is not an option for us. There's a pretty limited cap on that market. So being able to go after film, which is something that we can really win at and move the needle on with our unique landscapes and our structures and everything that we have here was an easy way for us to kind of move into that type of industry. So it also really filled a need for our community because of who we are and what we have here. We're already kind of getting some of these projects sent our way. And, should they have gone to the city of Cody? Should they come to the tourism office? Should they go to the chamber, the economic development board? Who should take these projects on? That wasn't really deciphered yet. So with us becoming the official film commission office, using the destination development funds to hire a professional that's been doing this for years and bringing these type of projects to Wyoming with Kelly Estes, it really has filled that need within our community where people can get those inquiries, send them right to us, and they know they're going to be getting the most professional type of service that they possibly could. This also gives us a great option to fulfill our shoulder and winter seasons as well, to try to produce some more economic impact for our destination during those times. I chose this picture specifically because it really captures, I think, everything that we pictured when we wanted to start a film commission office. So first of all, we had the NFL Network here, which is a massive audience and a very targeted audience and qualified audience for people that like to visit our destination. Number 2, the NFL Network actually needed some help with production on this thing. So we were able to get a local production agency, Cactus Productions, involved with this project. So creating jobs for our destination. And number 3, this was filmed at Heart Mountain in early May, one of our early shoulder season months. Once again, producing heads and beds, producing economic spend in our destination when we need it most. And then the last thing that we pursued was what we call our outdoor recreation study. This is about what's locally known as the Plug, which is an unplowed road from the end of Chief Joseph all the way into Cook City. So 2 states, 2 Forest Service, 2 DOTs, 2 governors, 2 communities, a lot that goes into this thing. And there's some people on the side of this issue that feel like if this was ever plowed and gave, Cody year-round access, driving access to Yellowstone, it would change us for the better. And there's other people on the other side that feel like having that as a trail that connects the Beartooth mountain range with the Cook City mountain range, that is the best case scenario of what we already have. So we partnered with, or this was produced by RRC, who's done some stuff with us in the past, but this was supported very importantly by not just us, but two partners on the Montana side as well, with Yellowstone Country, which is, the DMO similar to us on the Montana side, and then ITRR, which is a study group on the Montana side as well that's funded with lodging tax. So this was a 3-part survey that includes a regional resident survey, a winter intercept survey, and then a secondary analysis that kind of puts it all together. So why would we do this, and why DDF program to fund this thing? Well, this is a more expensive type study, and something like this would take away from our normal sales and marketing program. So the DDF program really helped us be able to afford something like this to where we can move forward with it. What we're going to do with it to move forward as well is this is going to be a great educational base for the actual decision makers to have a way to move forward. So the Forest Service, the DOT, the governors, all that sort of stuff. This is a neutral study with views on both sides that everybody can use as facts to help them move forward and make some real decisions. So we're excited to see how this moves some things forward for us for the next few years. And then lastly, separate from the DDF program here, I wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about the partnerships and the dollars and programs that we do with the Wyoming Office of Tourism. Honestly, our marketing and sales plan that we put together every single year would look very, very different if we did not have the partners that we have with the Wyoming Office of Tourism. Not just their dollars, but their expertise, their connections, everything that they bring to the table for us to where we really just need to be able to show up and be able to sell our destination. So the annual things that we can look forward to every single year that we partake in is the Wyoming Travel Guide and the Yellowstone Journal. Number one, they produce over 300,000 physical copies of these publications every single year, but they actually have a total reach of 800,000. If we were to do the same sort of advertisement in just a normal consumer magazine with the same type of reach, that would probably cost us in the neighborhood of probably $25,000 to $30,000 at least. And that would probably be for about 3 months, not for a year-round publication. Also, I mean, people are obviously interested in Wyoming when they're grabbing these things, so they're a very qualified audience for us as well. Diane and her marketing team do a great job of sending people to their website as well. And so we also advertise on their website with digital ads and lead programs that we could take advantage of on that side. Some new co-op options that they offered for us this year that we were very excited for were actually TV spots on the Cowboy Channel, which you can't get a more qualified audience for the rodeo capital of the world than the Cowboy Channel. These will be aired during some of the top rodeos in the country, like Pendleton Roundup or the Extreme Bulls that happens every single year in Texas and Houston. But very excited to see how that performs for us this coming summer. And then Google Listings and TripAdvisor, we got an audit on both of those. So that is very important that you have your highest points of interest with completed TripAdvisor and Google Listings as people search for that stuff. It just makes the traveler feel much more comfortable and educated on how to plan for trips to your area. Also, if you've ever tried to work with Google or TripAdvisor by yourself, they are very hard to work with. They are very expensive. And because of Diane and her team and their guys' forward thinking that they had for us here, they actually matched some dollars for us on that one as well. So it's very affordable for us as well. On the other side, tourism is such a relationship based business. People like to do business with who they know, who they like, and who they feel comfortable with. So sales and media missions really are a strong part of our sales and marketing efforts. Once again, because of what they offer us at the local level, stuff like the New York Media Mission, the Canadian Media and Sales Missions, they put together all of these events for us. They preface the media. They, put the dollars forward to put these receptions together. To really, all we have to do at the local level is buy a plane ticket, a hotel room, and show up and be ready to talk with these people and promote our destination. So once again, would not be able to do any of this stuff without Diane's team and her efforts and matching dollars on stuff like that. And then lastly, James actually mentioned these already, but the International Roundup, this gives us year-round marketing in some of our best international feeder markets. It also gives us 43 in-person meetings with buyers and exposure to our top international markets. And then International Powwow, that's the second largest trade show in our world, in the entire world. And would not even be affordable for us without the co-op dollars that these guys allow us to move forward with. So on that one, we get to meet with over 70 buyers from all across the world, and there's dedicated networking events too that feature the Great American West, as well as some multiple other established networking events that we could take advantage of as well. So that is everything I had.
Any questions? All right. Back to Diane.
Madam Chairman and members of the committee, just in closing, I want to thank you for your time. Hopefully you can has deepened your understanding today by some of the things that we do and working with our partners. I also would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge the volunteer service of the Wyoming Tourism Board. And here with us today, I did not introduce him when I started, so my apologies. But Q Blair with Blair Hotels. Q is the vice chairman of the Wyoming Tourism Board, and just has been a great leader in helping us throughout framing up our scope of work and our strategic plans. You have with you at your place the 2023 year in review. You can glance through that at your leisure. Please, at any time, if you have questions, you can always reach out to me, but there's members of our team here. And just in closing, thank you so much for the work that you do to guide and shape Wyoming, but also for your support of the visitor economy. It means a lot to all of us, and I know it means a lot to your constituents. So thank you.
Thank you, Director Schober. Any questions before we wrap this up? Thank you.
And for the record, we're ahead.
Okay.
I know.
And I'm thinking because we are ahead, is if Director Nesvik could give us a tour of this building that is new, or if you can find somebody that can do that. Okay, so I think we'll take a break until about 10 and we'll take a break and go on a short tour. Oh, we can. Public comments on the tourism presentation. Thank you, Senator. Okay. Thank you, Director. So I guess we will just take a break until about 10 o'clock. All right, I think we'll get back to our business at hand. Are we back live? Okay, perfect. So thank you for returning to Travel Recreation Wildlife Committee meeting. Next on our agenda is Wyoming Game and Fish. And Director Nesvik is going to talk about financial planning. Director?
So Madam Chair, if I may, in accordance with the committee's request during the discussion on the interim, I do have a couple of agency updates related to topics that were discussed in the interim discussion, if that'll work.
Sure.
Okay. So first, as you all may remember, there was quite a discussion during the committee meeting that was focusing on what topics would be recommended for the interim, and one of those was trapping. And I thought it would be beneficial for this committee to know that at our recent meeting in Riverton, the Game and Fish Commission heard about an hour's worth of public testimony, as well as a pretty good, long, comprehensive presentation from the department on things that have been done in the past relative to trapping regulation, responding to concerns from the public and from trappers. So anyway, the commission had a pretty significant discussion on this topic following the presentation from the department and also the public testimony. They directed the department to approach the legislature with recommendations very similar to those that were brought about 3 to 4 years ago to this committee. I think that the recommendations we'll discuss at some point. I know it's not on your interim schedule, so we'll have to work this a different way, or we'll move in any direction that you want us to on this. But we will look at, and what we will talk to the legislature about is providing the commission authority for to institute setbacks in high use public use areas, and then also a look at not hunter education, but trapper education requirements similar to hunter education. Again, this is what was recommended several years ago and didn't make it through the committee process. There has been some good work from different, particularly the one group in Star Valley that has been very productive in trying to find some ideas that nearly everyone involved supports, including trappers, including members of the public that have nothing to do with any kind of hunting or fishing, those folks that walk their dogs. And so I do see some real opportunities here to work on a solution that a lot of folks could rally around here over the interim. I have heard there's already some work that's occurring with legislators, but I don't have firsthand knowledge of that. That's secondhand, that there's at least 1 or 2 legislators that have begun some work on this. So with that, I just wanted to provide that update because it was germane to what you've talked about in the past.
Great. Thank you, Director. And I just want to make a comment about how we'll handle public comment after the topics that we have this morning. We're going to limit public comment to 20 minutes, and we'll limit each commenter to 2 minutes. We'll have a timer here. So because we have quite a busy agenda today and tomorrow, we want to do that. And people that are here to comment about the wolf issue, the committee has had an opportunity to listen to the Game and Fish Commission meeting that was held in April in Riverton. And so many of us have heard those comments, the 2 hours of comments that they took. And we want you to know that you've been heard. The group that commented has been heard. So that's how we'll proceed when it comes time for public comments. And so, Director, if you would want to proceed, are we ready for financial planning?
One more quick agency
Okay,
update on
that'll be
elk
great.
management. That was another topic
yes.
that was discussed during the interim. I just wanted to provide you a real quick update. We've taken some pretty significant steps here over the last year to address over-objective elk populations. We've made progress in several areas and several problem areas. We've implemented these new uncomfortable to many auxiliary hunting seasons, as well as agency removal, as well as providing lethal take permits to landowners. At the April commission meeting, the commission approved the issuance of unlimited cow-calf licenses in certain hunt areas where we have problems with over-objective elk populations. That's something that's not been done for elk ever. Directly following the end of the session, I did reach out in the aftermath of House Bill 60, and that bill failing to pass, I did reach out to some legislators, members of stock growers, or the executive vice president of stock growers, and some selected livestock producers to discuss ideas on what a regulation could look like versus another statute. There was support and they gave me some great ideas. I still have some work to do with sportsmen to talk to them about what a regulation might look like, but we are moving fairly quickly on taking a regulation out for public comment. My intent is to have that before the commission at their September meeting. And so the public comment period will begin roughly 2 months before that. But I did want the committee to know we've continued to work on this issue despite what happened during the session with House Bill 60. Any questions, Madam Chair?
Representative Western.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Director Nesbitt, I know there's been a lot of discussion around, management policies for those over objective elk herds. I know that the department is using the authority they've had for quite a long time to issue some of those out of season depredation hunts. Could you maybe just delve into a little bit the nature, who's doing it, how many have been harvested, give or take, or any of that, if you have that information handy?
Director.
Yeah, absolutely. Madam Chair, Representative Western. So they're fairly new. We instituted this new program about a year ago. The way that the auxiliary hunt works is when we identify an area, a landowner comes forward and says, look, I've got a problem here. We evaluate that and we're pretty specific to either that private landowner or a group of private landowners that are experiencing similar problems. We issue them, or not, we don't issue the landowners licenses, but we make available a certain number of licenses that can be used at the landowner's discretion. The landowner can pick who they want to come and use those licenses on that land. Those folks can receive those licenses outside of the limitations that, that are normal as far as how many elk licenses a person can have a year. So a person could have during the normal hunting season, their normal 3 licenses, but could participate in an auxiliary hunt and be issued up to 5 licenses for those. Again, it's the landowner has the discretion to say who they want to have come utilize those licenses. All of that meat is either utilized by the hunters or donated to some type of a program to provide food for those folks that are food insecure. And as far as the numbers, I don't want to guess because it's been ongoing throughout the winter. And so, but I do know that we've issued several of those permits, over a dozen around the state.
Follow up.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Director Nesbitt, but that's different than the actual, forgive me using the wrong word, but just that the harvesting ability that the department has to go out and just basically cull some of these over objective herds, correct? And that's
Yes.
what I was more wondering about is, what's the status of that? If you have any rough idea of numbers, et cetera.
Yeah, so we have, Madam Chair, Representative Western, we have hired technicians in some of the more extreme cases where we've had the technicians go out and they're charged, they're issued a permit by the chief game warden to take elk, and they're extremely effective because they're out there every day. They know how the elk move. This is strictly on private land where the landowner has asked for it. And those, I can tell you that when this was used last fall in one particular area, they were able to remove in excess of 100 elk and cow elk. And all of those were taken to a processor and then donated through the First Lady's Hunger Initiative, Food from the Field, to folks, food banks around the state.
Thank you. Any other questions? No, so I guess we'll move on. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you, Madam Chair. So I'm going to introduce, I've got a few slides that I'll show here, but I want to introduce this topic. This certainly, and from my perspective, is for the Game and Fish Department, our top legislative priority. And that's really a look at our financial picture. And just bottom line up front, we are in a position now, I feel strongly that we are in a position right now where we need to look at additional revenue sources for the department. And I'm going to line out why that is. I'm going to line out some ideas for all of you. I'll give you the current fiscal picture for the department. And I'll give you some good justification for, where we've been and why we have this need right now. I will tell you that right up front, a real key point is that in the face of inflation that's occurred here over this last 3 years. That's certainly been felt by the department, and there haven't been significant revenue adjustments to adjust for inflation. We've found other ways to deal with that. Additionally, the department has been given additional responsibilities over this last 20 years or so that are significantly more than what they were, even 2 decades ago. And we've had to adjust for that. We've had to make changes to the way that we use our revenue in order to meet both legislative mandates as well as expectations from the public. It's important, I think, to remind the committee that we receive no general fund money. We did receive general funds here. 2017 was the last year that we received general fund money. And at that time, we were provided some funding to pay for the wolf management program, sage grouse, brucellosis, the disease program, aquatic invasive species, and then sensitive species. Those 5 programs were paid for by the general fund. At that time, the legislature said, Game and Fish, we're not going to have any more legislatively appropriated funds to your agency. They did a minor fee adjustment to offset the cost of that removal of that revenue. And they said, go run Game and Fish like a business. And I took that to heart. And to tell you the truth, I think that's one of the best things that's happened to our department, to not have general fund revenues and to run our agency autonomously, to follow the North American model of wildlife conservation, where sportsmen and women pay the costs of wildlife management in our state. So you're going to see when we walk through this, we've managed our money well. We've created our own LISRA, is what I'm calling it, our own rainy day account that has 5 months worth of operating revenue in it. And we've never had that in the past. We've also managed our revenue so that revenue exceeds expenditure in order to provide a gap there so that we can have one-time available resources, so that we don't have to go to the legislature to go and fund CapCon, as an example. This building right here was not funded by any legislative dollars. This was built by sportsmen. This is the first one that we were able to build completely on our own without any legislative assistance. So anyway, and I'm going to talk through some of the really cool one-time work that we were able to do because we managed our revenue the way we did. But the bottom line is because of inflation and no revenue changes, that gap between revenue and expenditure has gotten extremely tight. And I'm going to show you that here on a slide here in just a minute. So as I mentioned, there in 2017, there was a fee adjustment. Again, it was a minor fee adjustment to compensate for that revenue we lost from the general fund. Before that, there's been no across the board fee adjustments since 2008. There was a move in 2012 and some interest in addressing this issue in 2012, but there wasn't anything that actually came to fruition out of those efforts. We have had some very specialized targeted bills that have resulted in additional revenue. And frankly, those targeted specialized kind of efforts have really been what's kept us in the position that we're in, where we can maintain revenues above expenditures and still meet all of our legislative and public expectation requirements. And I can talk through any of those that you'd like to. Most recently, there was a bill that passed this last session, just to remind you that raised the non-resident special license fee, very, very small group of licenses. But that increase in revenue really helped us get through what we've seen here over this last 3 years with inflation. It's affected us in every corner of our agencies. And there's been a couple other things like that happened in the past that did provide us some help in revenue. Representative Western's bill that he led a few years ago with the conservation stamp fee increase, that certainly was helpful, specific to be able to work on important things with access, and then a little bit with highway crossings. Some of the things that we've done with these discretionary funds that we've had available in our one-time budget, over this last 4 or 5 years, we've been able to tick off a lot of really important high priority projects for the state. We've done, our public is more concerned now than I've seen in my career, 29 years. Our public is more concerned about mule deer than I've ever seen. Our folks share the same concerns. And this west-wide continual decline of mule deer is something that we have poured a lot of resources into. We've used a lot of that one-time money to do work on mule deer and try to figure out how to at least arrest the decline of mule deer in our state. We've done a lot of highway crossings. Those are very expensive. The commission has been involved in those. There's certainly been federal grants that have helped as well. And in many cases paid the lion's share, but there's a match requirement on those. And the department's been very engaged. We've done a lot of work on what I call the cancer of Wyoming and cheatgrass. And the commission has really stepped up over the last few years to put more money into treating cheatgrass and other invasives. You've all heard me talk a lot about aquatic invasive species, and I'm not going to bore you with a bunch more of aquatic invasive species today, but I will tell you that the next threat that I see to our state is with importing quagga or zebra mussels in fish that we import for our anglers. There's a an extremely high demand for warm and cool water species, particularly walleye in our state. And we've got some fisheries that now are completely dominated by walleye and walleye anglers. And so we don't have a place to raise those fish in Wyoming. And so we import them. And the places where we can go and import walleye into our state are becoming fewer and fewer. We're down to 1 or 2. And that risk of us bringing zebra quagga mussels in those walleye that we import, I think has gotten to a point where we really needed to address it. So recently the commission approved our last big one-time expenditure for a while until we figure out some additional revenue to a warm, cool water hatchery so that we can raise our own walleye and other warm and cool water species. We're basically not building a new hatchery. We're just adding on to an existing hatchery at Spees, Central Wyoming. And really this is primarily focused on protecting our state, but also on providing angler opportunity that we know is so important to our anglers. And you've heard me talk about this before. That's something that sportsmen are paying for that benefits everybody in the state of Wyoming, whether they hunt or fish. If aquatic invasive species make it into our waters, it affects agricultural water delivery, hydroelectric power, municipal water infrastructure, the health and quality biologically of our water and reservoirs. So there's a tremendous benefit that sportsmen are providing to all Wyoming citizens when they pay for all of our efforts to protect the state from aquatic invasive species. I mentioned that I'm going through my list now of some of our one-time projects. This is another one, this Cody Regional Office. We've been working for 25 years on trying to solve problems with keeping and recruiting employees to go to Jackson, Representative Byron's district. And we've allocated money now to be able to provide housing to a level that we can keep the number of folks that we need to have in Jackson in order to meet the public demand there.
Representative Burkhart.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. So, Director, how are you doing, not just Jackson, but everywhere else? It seems like the department is losing a lot of people over a short period of time with retirements, other career interests, that sort of thing. How are you coping with that?
Director.
So, Madam Chair, Representative Burkhart, we haven't had the resources to provide above and beyond additional employee housing above and beyond what we always have. So our game wardens, there are 50 district game wardens across the state, all are required as a condition of their employment to live in a game warden station. That has, I say that, and I need to pull that back a little bit. It's a little bit less than 50 now because we've had a few regional office towns where we no longer have game warden stations where there's a district office there. But for the most part, district game wardens all have a house that we provide. And we've done that since the 40s or 50s, 1940s or 1950s. All of our fish hatcheries, we require people to be there 24/7. They've got to be there to respond to emergencies and take care of the hatchery. So each fish hatchery rearing station around the state has got employee housing for those employees that have to work right there at the hatchery. And then we have a handful of places on WHMAs on habitat management areas where there's employee housing. But beyond that, there's no real assistance to our employees outside of what I just mentioned, and then Jackson.
Madam Chairman.
Oh,
Director, I probably wasn't clear. I wasn't talking just directly about housing. I was talking about overall staffing. Staffing of the department seems to be declining with people leaving, retirements and all of that.
Yeah.
Where do you stand with replacing those people, stopping that outflow? As you and I have talked, having the wardens in the field is a primary goal of mine. I keep noticing the trucks coming in here, the ones that are perfectly clean and the ones that are dirty, and the clean ones keep outnumbering the dirty ones. So they're not getting in the field as much as they should in my mind. But with staffing, how are you addressing those issues?
Director.
So Madam Chair, Representative Burkhart. So where we've had the biggest challenges with staffing is with game wardens, and you mentioned that. And so our chief game warden here a few years ago wanted to try a new approach. And so he built a recruiting and a training small little work unit of game wardens to work actively at recruiting new game wardens, and then also making sure that we train them to a level where they feel very confident and they want to stick around after they're here. And then we also used those folks to help meet some of the training workload, to relieve that workload from other game wardens around the state, so they didn't have to train new wardens and they could be out in the field doing their job. That's one major step we've taken. And I just went here 2 or 3 weeks ago and spoke to the graduating class at the Wyoming Law Enforcement Academy and saw 6 game wardens graduate all at the same time. And I haven't seen that in my career, where we've had a little bit of a turnaround. I will tell you that I remain concerned, because one thing that has changed in my career is that early on, when a game warden came to work here, he or she retired from here. And we are seeing new game wardens come on and say, yeah, I like the job, but after 5 or 6 years, they want to go try something different and go be a firefighter, or go to another state, or go work for a federal agency. And so that's been a shift. I think, some of it may be related. I hear a lot from our wardens about concerns with workload, and that creates problems for some of them, work-life balance. But I think there's also a change in the demographic and the generational focuses of younger folks these days. They look at careers differently. I've heard national statistics that most folks now change careers every 7 years. So I think we faced some of that. But I will tell you that we focused all on game wardens. We have had some challenges in other parts of the department. I feel pretty good about where we're at in those other places. Programmers is a problem, not just for us, but for almost everybody in government or in the private sector. But we're doing well there. We're hanging tough there. And interestingly, wildlife biologists, we don't have a struggle recruiting good wildlife biologists, which is another that's helping us out. It's helping us offset some of the other challenges that we have with recruiting.
No. Representative Western.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Director, piggybacking a little bit on Representative Burkhart's line of questioning, you're going to have had quite a few conversations about this issue of staffing, compensation, all that stuff. So we've given you guys the ability to pay some of your wardens more. I know we've also talked about kind of shifting away from the duties that maybe are less attractive as a warden. I mean, their job is to be out in the field, that kind of stuff. I know they do a lot of desk work. I mean, where's that process right now of kind of offloading some of that kind of stuff, dealing with damage claims, et cetera? Where does that all stand right now, give or take?
Director.
So, Madam Chair, Representative Western, thanks for that question. So we recently hired, it's either 4 or 5 new wildlife technicians, wildlife specialists, I think we're calling them, that are going to focus on those issues: private land issues, wildlife conflict, taking some of the workload off of the standard traditional duties of a game warden every day. I mean, that's certainly 4 or 5 isn't much, but it's a start. This is an opportunity to see how this model works. It's something that we've never done. And I do believe that, we're going to focus those positions in the areas where we have the biggest problems with game warden workload. But I'm optimistic, and we were able to hire some really good folks It doesn't have a law enforcement nexus to it. These are not law enforcement officers. They're specialists that aren't required to take that training, and they can go do a lot of the work that oftentimes takes game wardens out of the field. There's opportunity to do more of that. But again, it's tied to this issue. It's tied to revenue. In order to have more folks, we've got to have more revenue. They're expensive. And I hope that answers your question.
Well, okay, I guess. Any other questions? Representative Byron.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Director, right now on your game warden list, we talked about this in the previous session, but how many open positions do you guys have right now on your chief game warden list? I think you mentioned you had plus or minus 50 positions. Can you comment on what's currently open?
Director.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I'm Representative Byron. Absolutely. I think we've actually narrowed that down to just a handful. Recently, we were able to hire and fill almost every one of the game warden positions. There's 50 senior game wardens around the state that have a district, and then there's another 5 or 6 access coordinators that focus on access, but they're game wardens. And then we have about 10 that are entry-level game wardens. So they don't have a district. They're there at the entry level. And all of those, either all of them or just shy of all of them are filled right now. But as Representative Burkhart alluded to, that we've had that before, and then we have this, people leave before we ever would have expected. So I say that I'm optimistic about we're definitely on an upward trend, but that amount of vacancies could be different a month from now.
Follow up.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Thank you, Director. So, we're talking in the 60s now, kind of combining all those positions, maybe closer to 70. And maybe you're getting this with your getting there with this presentation, but do you see some more secure funding benefiting, this issue that tends to kind of be cyclical or change? Because, we had a chat and we had somewhere close to 10 open positions. Right now, it sounds like we're closing that gap, but, I'm just trying to get at, with secure funding, does that obviously affect that 50, 60, 70 positions and your ability to keep, potentially, to Representative Burkhart's point, potentially keep those folks from, hopping off to go do something else?
Director.
Yeah, Madam Chair, Representative Byron. The short answer is absolutely. What we've heard from folks that we've talked to that are leaving is they struggle with the workload. And so I think that, with additional revenue, being able to employ some folks that can help relieve that workload that aren't necessarily game wardens, that can do some of those other duties, I think is a step in the right direction. As far as the generational interests, I don't know how we deal with that, but I do think that addressing workload across the agency will help.
Representative Storer.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Good morning, Director Nesbitt. Good to see you. I happen to be up at Ruckelshaus House Institute Collaborative graduation and kind of a collaborative day that they had last month, and heard a report from one of your employees who had gone through the program and talked about the question of how women at Game and Fish are both challenged to work there. And most specifically, I was interested in learning about how young women who come in and think of this as their dream job, but then do have trouble with the life-work balance, and sometimes related to the fact that the state doesn't provide maternity leave or family leave, and perhaps some of the other issues that effort identified. I'm just curious whether you had anything else to share on that subject that would be of interest to the committee. Thank you, Director.
Yeah, Madam Chair, Representative Storer. So I will tell you that, again, looking back over a long period of time, when I started, we did not employ very many women at all. And there was that I could see anyway, any interest by the department in hiring only men. But we just didn't have very many women applicants. We now have a significant number of women in field positions across the department, both game wardens and and wildlife biologists, as well as fisheries technicians. So we employ a lot of women that are just exceptional employees across our department. Specific to your question, we did have one of our exceptional female employees do some work on the issue you brought up here recently. She's put together a report. She submitted it to me. And we are in the process with the senior leadership team of looking at what we're going to do with that report. Now, some of those things, the specific thing that you addressed with maternity leave, those are things that are outside the department's purview. You know, we follow state policy on those things, but there are some things that we're going to look at internally that might help with some of the work-life balance, particularly for those ladies that want to have children and want to figure out how to do that and still have a good career with game and fish. And so we're certainly very interested in figuring out how to make that work. And I'm glad we've taken these steps to try to look at that.
Hello? No? Any other questions? Okay, I guess we'll move on.
Okay, so I did want to, before I go dive into this presentation, I did want to talk a little bit too about the change in expectations of the department over the last, I picked 2 decades for, because it's easy math for me. But just looking over the last couple of decades, some changes in what we're required to do. Part of the reason I picked 2 decades as well is because that's the last time, it was 2 decades ago when the governor approved an increase in the cap, the position cap for game and fish employees. We recently, after we went through this pretty laborious process and analysis, received a 3-phased authority to increase our cap that we've had phase 1 of right now. We've already implemented phase 1. But anyway, here's some things that have happened over those 20 years that has really changed the requirements for the department. So first of all, the AIS program was legislatively mandated in 2010. That equates to roughly 60 seasonal people as well as 5 or 6 full-time employees. We actually started that program and ran it for a long time on temporary or AWEC employees, contract employees, and that wasn't working as effectively and as efficiently as we'd like it. We know this program's here for a long time, and so we now have a handful of FTEs, but we took those out of some other program. We cut some other position somewhere else in order to take care of the AIS responsibilities that we have. Our large carnivore responsibilities over the last 20 years have changed immensely. The expansion of the grizzly bear population in our state and the distribution of grizzly bears from 2003 to 2023 and the workload associated with that has grown exponentially, as have the workload around managing gray wolves, which I'll provide an update on here in the next topic. And then we also continue to manage those species we've had for a long period of time in Wyoming with mountain lions and black bears. That workload alone has increased our need for FTEs by 6 to 10 employees. The need's more than that, but we've just addressed it with what we could. And again, we took those positions from somewhere else and allocated them to large carnivore management. Bottom line is we've got more people in Wyoming. It doesn't seem like a lot more, but in that period of time, there's about 50,000 more people, and 50,000 more people means more calls for service, more expectations for the department to respond to different events. And so that has certainly increased our expectations. We have a continually growing cost associated with running elk feed grounds. And right now, Western Wyoming, we're in a position where that's not an option. We have to continue to manage elk feed grounds. We have put together a long-term plan to look at what that might look like over the long haul. But certainly for the short term, those costs with that program continue to grow. Buying hay, trying to find people that can go and feed on feed grounds using horses, and there's a lot of costs associated with that. And then I've talked about it already today that this increase in the needs to respond to these challenges with growing elk herds in eastern Wyoming and places where the department has a heck of a time being able to manage those animals because we don't have access. And in nearly every case where you've got a landowner that's having a problem, we've got, the most exceptional case I can think of is we have a landowner who throws his doors wide open, says anybody can come and hunt, and they do. And his neighbors don't allow hardly any hunting at all. And so those elk learn quickly after the first bullets fly to go to the neighbors. And then, come springtime, he gets to deal with all those elk coming back to his place. Those are challenges that are expensive and difficult for the department to deal with. And it's a new problem. We've always had damage across our state, different places. Heck, right here in the Bighorn Basin used to be the highest incidence of big game damage in the state. But this Eastern Wyoming problem is big and it costs money. I'm just talked about personnel we're hiring to try to help address it. So, here's the bottom line before I go through our current financial status is, in order to manage a very diverse, world-class wildlife resource that we have in our state, we need a diverse, world-class department to be able to do that. And we need additional revenue to do it. And again, I'm going to provide you with some ideas. So quickly, I have a lot of supporting information for everything I'm going to present here. I did not go down into the granular detail of all of our budgets. I'm glad to do it if that's where the committee wants to go. I'm going to start with an overview and talk about what our current revenue sources are, our current financial picture and our projections, and then we can go as deep as you want to go anywhere else. We have nothing with any of this information to hide. So first of all, this for many of you is not news, but our primary funding sources, you can see there, almost 70% from license fees, conservation stamps, and boating registration. We also, about a quarter of our revenue is from federal aid, mainly from two Pittman Robertson and Dingle Johnson, two restoration conservation programs that I will talk about here towards the end so you understand how those work. And then we have other grants and sometimes some donations. We have other sources we are able to make a little bit of interest. Lately, that's been more because interest rates are up. But those are our primary sources of our income. When you look specifically at hunting licenses, we can go to the next one. There we go. This is the breakdown between hunting and fishing, resident and non-resident. And you can see the lion's share of our revenue is generated from non-resident hunting license sales. $41.8 million was last, or 2022, not 2023. With resident hunting making about roughly $8 million of that revenue. And then interestingly, and one of the things that happened that we did not project that has helped us stay fiscally sound is we had an increase about, it's probably been 7 or 8 years now ago that we did not project in non-resident fishing license revenue. And so it's pretty significant there when you think about just fishing being $6 million for non-resident fishermen. So we have some other revenue sources that are internal. So we have an access fund. And this basically we're able to spend the interest on, or I'm sorry, I'm on the wrong fund, on the access fund. This is earmarked money that comes from the sale of conservation stamps. So 25% of it goes to 25% of this access fund comes from conservation stamps, 50% from lifetime conservation stamp revenue for those that have bought lifetime conservation stamps. And then we also have state restitution that's in this fund, and then some donations. We have interest from our wildlife trust. We're able to spend that interest if the commission so chooses on an annual basis, but the corpus can't be touched. We have an aquatic invasive species fund that comes from the sale of AIS decals. So if you are operating a motorized or non-motorized boat in Wyoming, you've got to have an AIS decal that helps to pay for the program, and that's where that fund is located. We have the Public Access and Wildlife Conservation Fund. I talked about this earlier. This was the bill that's recent that Representative Western sponsored here a few years ago that increased and earmarked a portion of conservation stamp fee money specifically to access and to migration corridors. And we have actually already been able to acquire some really neat access opportunities through that effort. And then we have our operating fund, and I'm going to talk about a little bit more about the operating fund. So we do have restrictions on how we because of the federal nexus, and then also because of state statutes, we do have some restrictions on how we can spend certain dollars that we receive. So any of our boating registration money is specifically allocated to boating safety and education, law enforcement, and then access and administration. So we do have several legislatively mandated expenditures. We have a certain amount of money that we have to maintain in our damage account. We have to have landowner coupons where we reimburse landowners for allowing access. We do cost allocation where, for example, with Enterprise Technology Services, which is a state agency, as you're well aware, we receive services from them, and then we are required to pay an allocation to them each year for those services. Another example is with Human Resources that was combined all within DA&I here a couple of years ago. We pay cost allocation to that for those services that we receive. We also have grants, like I indicated, several grants, and there's always terms on them. Most of the time they're federal. We do receive federal restitution. So on cases that go to federal court that are derived out of Wyoming, oftentimes they result in a restitution payment, and that comes to the department with some strings tied at times. And then I'm going to talk more about federal excise taxes, both Pittman Robertson and Dingle Johnson, and how those work here in just a second. We do have a few interest-bearing accounts. So our lifetime license fund is about $250,000 annually in just interest income off of those folks that have bought lifetime fishing, small game, and combination licenses. We have the Wildlife Trust Fund that is made up half of our conservation stamp revenue, and then some donations. And then recently, the legislature provided us the opportunity to invest, as the commission sees fit, some of our reserve funds in Pool A. Our commission has decided to take our operational reserve or our rainy day account and to put it into Pool A. And that has been, that's a pretty good deal, because we're able to allow that account, our operational reserve, to grow without having to invest any more money in it. We just allow that interest that's generated by being in Pool A to just continue to build the corpus, so that is our adjustment for inflation to make sure we can maintain 5 months of operating revenue in perpetuity. And our purpose behind that is similar to the legislative reserve account. It's for those unexpected things that may occur, to make sure if we, for whatever reason, had a significant change and a decline in hunting license sales, we would have some money in reserve to be able to keep the lights on until we work through that situation. So I think I saw Representative Western.
Representative Western.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Director, how much in total do you guys have parked in Pool A? Do you know off the top of your head?
So I'm going to ask Meredith to give me the specific number, Madam Chair, if that's okay. Just under 44.5 million, which is about 5 months worth of operating revenue.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I think Pool A is averaging, I think it's about 5%, give or take. So that's roughly $2.5 million a year in additional revenue that you guys are generating. And so my follow-up question is there any plans, or do you guys have the ability to allocate more funds to your Pool A opportunity? Because I mean, that $2.5 million, that's almost free money, cost-free money to the department.
Director.
Madam Chair, Representative Western, at this point, what the commission has decided to do is to allow the interest to just stay in Pool A. That's how we're building Pool A. So, but there's really not an opportunity. We don't have the discretionary money to just put more into Pool A right now. But we also recognize that if we want it, if the goal is 5 months, the only way to keep it at 5 months is there's got to be more money that goes into it every year because of inflation. And that's why we're allowing that 5%, whatever the return is, to just stay there and build the corpus.
All right. I guess any other questions? No. We'll carry on then. Thank you.
So I'm going to talk through these numbers quickly. So our projected revenue for this coming year is about $103.5 million. Our budget, our approved budget is at $102 million little bit north of that. And then our estimated expenditures are 97 million. Now, because as you guys are aware, you never fully execute 100% of a budget. So we calculate and we plan for that when we put together our projections. We do have a handful of one-time project expenditures for this year that's at 3 million. That's the smallest it's been in many years. And so our total estimated expenditures for this coming year are about $100 million. And again, you can see our estimated revenues, projected revenues about 103.5. So as far as where that leaves us, when you go down and you work through each one of these different categories, is we will, when we get done paying our bills, allocating our money to those projects that have already been approved by the commission, we're looking at about a $7 million amount of money that's discretionary that can be used for one-time type work. And with that projected revenue and continued inflation, our projection is that number just continues to shrink. And I really feel strongly that getting ahead of this now and doing something with revenue is in the best interest of the state and the best interest of the department. I get asked oftentimes, where do we spend most of our money by species? So this gives you a little bit of a breakdown. Most of our revenue generation actually comes from big game. So it's not a surprise that almost half of our expenditures go to big game. And then sport fish is certainly the next biggest expenditure. And then all those other things that we have responsibility for managing as a game species in Wyoming is where most of the rest goes. Go ahead. So I did tell you that I wanted to talk through the two. You saw about 25% of our revenue comes from federal aid on excise taxes. And
Madam
the first
Chair?
one I wanted to just give you an overview on.
Placement, relays are on the south side.
Oh,
Madam
Is that,
Chair,
Senator Ellis?
yeah, sorry, Madam Chair. I was wondering when it came to on
Thank
the
you.
previous slide with endangered species, if you could give us a sense of which species, because I think that ranges from everything that's really small to like mice to, larger species. So Director, if you could put a finer point on that. And obviously, a lot of those species should be managed by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. Can you talk just a little bit about what kind of support you provide in management?
Director.
Yeah, Madam Chair, Senator Ellis. So by far the largest expenditure on endangered species that we have is on grizzly bear management and recovery. Our state has chosen for many, many years to provide funding and resources to maintain grizzly bears viable and recover them so that we can get to a point where they're delisted. And this right now equates to about $2.5 million a year. There's some other smaller amounts of money that are expended on other endangered species like black-footed ferret as an example, but the lion's share of the money is specific to grizzly bear. And the policy decision here has been that if the state wants to be in a really good position to be able to implement our state management plan upon delisting, we need to be a part of that management now. There has been in many legislative meetings, in many discussions between the governor and I, and many discussions amongst the commission, questioning how long do we continue to do this if grizzly bears continue to be listed? And that's a very difficult question, because if the state completely backs off, hands-off approach, there's a lot of fear about what message that may send, and also how judges may view that when they're deciding whether bears should be delisted, what the Fish and Wildlife Service may think if the state isn't actively putting resources forward. At the end of the day, without the state resources that have been plugged into the grizzly bear recovery over 40 years, it would not have happened. We're well north of $50 million in total that have been allocated to recovering grizzly bears and maintaining them. And frankly, the other thing with this particular species is if the state did decide to take hands off, there are certain requirements with grizzly bears that we would never be able to not do anymore. We cannot say no when a rancher calls and says, a grizzly bear just killed my calf. We have to be able to respond to that. When somebody calls and says there's a grizzly bear at my door and it's trying to break the door down. We need to be able to respond to that. We can't say call the Fish and Wildlife Service. So there's always going to be some requirement for us to spend money no matter what we're doing with management, research, and monitoring. But great question, Senator Ellis, and I hope that answered your question.
Follow up, Senator?
No, thank you, Director.
Thank you. Representative Western.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Director, maybe I'm just a little bit confused, and I was hoping you can clear it up. So the concern is that we are expending, 7 figures every year towards this issue, and that doesn't seem to be a clear outcome or objective. Or could you maybe clarify that a little bit for me?
Director.
Yeah. So as this continues to be tied up in court where it is right now, the hope is that we're going to achieve a successful outcome in court and we're going to have them delisted. And so this effort is to be prepared and ready to go and help the courts make that decision that it's a good idea for them to be delisted, because Wyoming is ready to go and has a management plan in place that they can implement. A lot of the data that we collect and we spend money on when we go fly right outside of town here, a lot of that data we collect has been used to demonstrate recovery over many years. The collars that we go put on bears and track reproduction and movement distribution. I mean, a lot of that information has been used to justify delisting. And so it's kind of it's a pretty thorny question as to, how far do you have to go in order to make sure that you're going to be in a favorable position in the eyes of others that are making decisions for our state.
Any other questions? Okay, we'll move on. Thank you.
All right. So Pittman-Robertson is, it has a purpose. It's 1937. It's been around a long time. And it has some pretty specific requirements with it, but its whole entire purpose when it was enacted was to restore, conserve, manage, and enhance wildlife and their habitat and provide hunter education. And remember, this came at a time when wildlife resources in the state and in the country were in pretty dismal shape. There's a lot of places where we didn't have anywhere near the wildlife resources that we have now. This act helped to provide folks that bought firearms, ammunition, and archery equipment, put an excise tax on those things and sporting goods, and then provided that money to the states in order to help restore and conserve wildlife populations. So each year, the revenue that the Fish and Wildlife Service receives from that excise tax, you can see some of the percentages up there, they use a formula to figure out how they're going to allocate that money back out to the states. And so it's 50% land area and 50% the number of paid license hunters. And then on hunter education, it looks at the state population compared to the U.S. total. And they have a formula and they figure out then, okay, Wyoming is going to get X amount of money. Now, that doesn't mean that they just cut a check. They don't. They wait, and we basically then have to show them that we are spending state resources on programs that are authorized under Pittman-Robertson. And really, it's fairly broad. It's basically all the stuff we do: wildlife conservation work, research, habitat, education. Those things are all covered. One exception, though, is all of our wildlife law enforcement is not able to be reimbursed by Pittman-Robertson. That all has to come out of Hyde. Been that way since 1937, and I saw Representative Western do the same thing I did the first time I heard that. It's like, why? And there actually was a bill here a few years ago in Congress to try to change that, and it did not pass. So bottom line is that this allocation we're notified of the allocation. Then we got to show our math, and we have to show them that we spent X dollars on viable programs, and we have to also show that the commission has control of the money. No other entity can direct where those monies go, or it creates what's called a diversion, and it jeopardizes all of our federal funding. So every year when our folks go and do their work and they have gas receipts and they log their time in a computer and they have to code it to certain codes. All that information gets tabulated and used to show the Fish and Wildlife Service that we met our match requirements so that they provide us our reimbursement. The year that it's allocated is not the year we receive it. We receive it after we show them what we've done. It's a reimbursement then. So everything's always like a year or two behind. One of the questions I often get is, why don't you just take Pittman Robertson money and go and build a new shooting range out there? Because I know that Pittman Robertson money qualifies for shooting ranges. And the answer I have to that question is, we can do that, but we don't take Pittman Robertson money and go build a shooting range. We go and spend state dollars that would have been spent on another priority, and then later get reimbursed for 75% of that shooting range. And then that means that 75% that we would have used somewhere else doesn't get spent there. And so and oftentimes that's fine, but it's a priorities discussion and a priorities issue. It's not that there's this big pot of money hanging out there for us to just dole out wherever we use it for day-to-day operations, for those green trucks to run up and down the road, for those boats to go out on Buffalo Bill, and for those planes to go fly right out west of town here to go look at grizzly bear moth sites. So we are different than other states. There's only, I think, 5 states in the country that are what's called CMS states. We have some more, we have a lot more of an autonomous program. Other states that are not CMS, they actually go plan a project, say, this is what we're going to spend the money on, submit their request to the Fish and Wildlife Service, and they get funded project by project by project, or program by program by program. Whereas we are given kind of a blanket to go do our work, submit our proof, our audit material, and then get reimbursed. So it's a different system, and a lot of folks get confused by that. And I'm just a game warden. I'm not an accountant, and it's taken Meredith a long time to get me smart enough to even be able to say what I just said. So Meredith will be very professional and won't laugh out loud really loud, but she knows that's true. So the Sport Fish Restoration Act is the other very similar excise tax, and it's electric motors, fishing equipment, boat fuel, and then import duties on tackle, pleasure boats and yachts. And this is also distributed to the states in a similar way, 40% based on your land area, and then 60% based on your paid licensed anglers. This is a much smaller pot of money. And, but you know, it's great. We're able to do some good work with everything related to all of our sport fish work. So PR, Pittman Robertson is almost entirely terrestrial wildlife for the most part. Dingle Johnson is more focused on the sport fish. So I already went through an example. We can go to the next one. I did that. So here's a few things I want to talk through. I hope I'm not blowing your time out, Madam Chair. I'm gonna keep concise here. So first thing I would say, go to the next slide, please, Meredith. These are some ideas that I have for you to consider. And as we didn't come here today on some of these with a specific ask. 2 we did, 2 we did not. If the committee's pleasure is to move forward on any of these, we can work between now and the next meeting to come up with some more specifics. But I wasn't interested in, as an example, trying to figure out a specific license fee ask until I knew the committee's pleasure. But on a couple of these others, I do have some thoughts for you. So first of all, 2007-ish, the legislature approved an authorization that the legislature may appropriate to the department reimbursement for those licenses that the legislature directed us to sell at a reduced price or to give away for free. And so once that went into place in 2007, the legislature did that every year until the COVID year. And when the legislature made large budget cuts in the first year of COVID, that recoupment was stripped away, and it has not been restored. And if you'll go to the next slide, please, we'll come back to this one, but if you go to the next one, you can see there, the bottom line down there in the lower right corner, that's about $1.2 million a year of funds that we used to receive to replace legislatively directed reduced priced fees. I don't view it as an allocation, a general fund allocation. It's more of a reimbursement for something that the legislature told us to do. We have a lot of licenses that we sell cheaper because there's a statute that says we have to. So anyway, that's one thing I believe that's certainly worthy of this committee's consideration.
So, Director?
Yes.
Can you give an example of what those might be? Governor's licenses or
Yeah.
veterans licenses, or are those things that are examples of this
Yeah. So
statutorily directed decreased fee?
yeah, absolutely. So pioneer licenses is an example. When you turn 65, in some cases, you are able to receive a free fishing small game bird license. So all the youth licenses are discounted by statute. There are free fishing permits that are allocated. There are decreases in heritage. So this again is an older folks. When you've been here a long time and you get old, you get free licenses. It's those kind of things. And there's some licenses that are allocated to other smaller groups. But the list up there on the left, if you look, that's the bigger lion's share of those licenses that are free and reduced price. And then the total amount that is each year.
So in the statute, it says we'll have these licenses, but it does not direct the legislature to reimburse the department for those licenses.
That's correct, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Okay, so go back, please, Meredith. The second one I want to talk about, I want to give you a specific statutory reference. So in 1977, the legislature at that time codified laws that exempted certain real property from ad valorem taxation. So in particular, Wyoming statute 39.1.201 subsection I exempted property owned by the state of Wyoming, which was used primarily for a governmental purpose. However, property owned by the Wyoming Game and Fish Commission was determined as not being used primarily for a governmental purpose and consequently is not exempt from taxation in subpart D. What that all means is that we on this building right now, that's a public building, we're paying property tax on this building every year. Our office in Jackson, we're paying $80,000 a year in property tax. All of our game warden stations that I talked about, we require the wardens to live there as a condition of employment so that they can serve the public out of those warden stations. We're paying property taxes on those. We're also paying property taxes on the lands that we own. And I suspect that there was part of the discussion when this happened was, Game and Fish owned large pieces of land, and there was concerns about what that may mean for local county tax rolls. I don't know that, but I'm just suspecting. And so my ask for your consideration is some type of a bill draft that would remove that exception specifically for commission-owned buildings that are used for a public purpose, and that would leave the land, because I believe that's where it'll become the most contentious, that we leave the land not exempted. I think what that means for the department on an annual basis is at least $500,000. If this moves forward, we can provide specifics. But anyway, that's item number 2 that I have for your consideration.
Co-Chairman Schuler.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Just a clarification on that. So you'd be talking more about buildings such as this. Would you be talking about the housing in some of the areas where the game wardens are living?
Director.
Yeah, Madam Co-Chair, yes, I would be talking about those buildings that are there for a public purpose. Now, employee housing in Jackson, there would be no public use of those. And so my thought would be, that could be a separate category, but those buildings where the public's invited to come use our fish hatchery visitor stations, at our research center, we have a visitor area. Those kind of buildings, I think, would be something I would ask for consideration on exempting.
Representative Western.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director, so obviously, I know we're kind of getting down to the weeds a bit, but versus land, buildings, public use, et cetera. Here, for example, if we take the Ellis acquisition that you guys recently made in Johnson County, by which I found elk on that specific piece of land. So
Outstanding.
Yeah, wasn't able to get one.
I knew those guys had come through. I told them to make sure they got that set up for you.
So appreciate that, Director. It's very kind of you.
Mhm.
A lot of that land would have been assessed as ag otherwise. So I was wondering if you could maybe kind of break down that the real chunk of your, or the real portion of your property tax bill is buildings like this, correct? And so do you have any kind of breakdown of, you know, what it is for that's land versus building, or if you have any idea or any sense?
Director or Meredith.
So, yeah, so Madam Chair, I'm Representative Western. Our total property tax bill last year was 840,000, correct? And of that, 350,000 was it regional offices or all buildings?
Regional.
Just regional offices. So you're right. If you added on the warden stations and the fish hatcheries, houses and the visitor centers, it would be the line, it'd be over $500,000.
Hello. Okay. Any other questions? All right, we'll carry on.
Okay, so next one, and this has been the commission authority to set license fees has been something that has been discussed, gone back and forth with a lot of perspective on all sides of this issue for many, many, many years. This first was seriously discussed by the legislature following a large, like a 32-member group that was put together by Governor Meade probably 12 years ago. And they studied all things wildlife and conservation funding across the state. And their number one recommendation was provide for the benefit of the users, provide the commission the ability to set fees, primarily because folks are interested in not large adjustments every 10 years, but small adjustments on a more regular basis with inflation. And that also that sportsmen, the folks that were paying for these licenses, were pretty darn engaged with the commission. So the commission is that interface with the public that hears from the public to determine, when appropriate, when not appropriate, and to take public comment on fees that the users are paying in order to have the privilege to hunt. I think it's worthy of discussion. I can tell you that the commission does have authority now to set some fees, and they have not maxed those out. And in fact, as this discussion goes on, I'm going to talk to you about what the commission can do and what they may consider to address the revenue issue. But I want to make it clear that when the commission's been given the ability to, for example, set the license fee for cow, calf, and doe fawn licenses, they haven't gone and priced those things exorbitantly. In fact, they're very, very reasonable when you look at other states. The commission currently has the ability to set the fees for preference points, and the commission is not maxed out for non-resident only, not for resident. The commission is not maxed out what they can charge for preference points. I think the max is 75, and they're right around $50 right now for non-residents. So, I know that for some folks, it's scary to divest that authority from the legislature to the executive branch to set fees, but pragmatically on the ground, watching a commission work for a lot of years, I don't foresee the commission acting any differently than what the legislature would act. They're still going to have to hear from the same constituents, and they're still going to have to hear. And the other thing along this line is that one of the things I do hear commonly from resident hunters is, why can't we go just talk to the commission about this fee thing? There's a lot of residents that are in favor of having a fee increase, their own fees. So anyway, I think it's worthy of discussion. I don't need to say any more about it. The other idea that I have here on the list that is a legislative requirement is we have an application fee that helps pay for the cost to process and conduct draws for both non-residents and residents. It's higher for non-residents than it is residents. And that is capped by the legislature at 5 and 15. Am I right? 5 and 15. Certainly we have a tremendous number of applications on an annual basis. And increasing that application fee cap would certainly be helpful. What I'm talking about here is not one large, big idea. I'm talking about a lot of small components that when put together get us close to our goal. And I don't know if I mentioned the goal yet. Our goal is to generate about 9 million additional revenue on an annual basis for the department. So with that, let me go to the next.
Director, Representative Western has a question.
Thinking about Chairman, Director, and I apologize for all the questions, but I know that application fee is a big component because that's non-refundable. Obviously, if I don't draw, you have to refund the actual application or the license fee itself. So, but you guys get to keep the balance of those application fees. And so my question, Madam Chairwoman, is could you maybe break that down a little bit in terms of what's the total revenue generated, non-resident, resident, et cetera?
Director.
Madam Chair, Representative Western, I'm going to look to our CFO, Meredith Wood.
Meredith.
Madam Chairman, Representative Western. So we have roughly 130,000 non-residents applying every year. That's a 5-year average at $15 a piece for those apps. And for residents, we have roughly 164,000 at $5 each. So I don't have my grand total math calculated, but
I can do the math. Give me those numbers, Meredith. 15 times.
130,000
So that's 2 million right there.
and 164,000 times 5.
That's 400,000.
2.5 million.
2.5 million.
All right, thank you. And we'll carry on.
All right, so next slide, please. So here's just so you know what we're up to. These are right now not issues that you necessarily would need to have involvement in, but potentially could. And these are things that the commission currently has some authority to deal with. So one of the things that I've had discussions with a few legislators outside of it, or one legislator in particular outside of this room, is looking at new ways to provide opportunity that we don't currently offer to nearly the same extent. One example is if you allow, so archery hunters don't harvest as many animals, the success is lower. So are there ways to increase the number of archery licenses? Because you don't have to correspondingly cut the same number of rifle hunter licenses, provide more opportunity, sell more licenses. More people are out in the field. It's a kind of a win-win for everybody. That's certainly something that the commission is going to look at. There are some, like I said, license fee adjustments that the commission can consider right now. I would not propose to them to look at our cow-calf or Dauphin license costs, because those are licenses we use to manage herds. And frankly, right now, because of the state of our mule deer, we just don't sell mule deer Dauphin licenses. We do sell a lot of whitetail Dauphin licenses, and to increase those costs, I think when we're asking people to use those licenses to manage those herds for us, would be counterproductive. Cow-calf licenses, we certainly would not want to ask the public to pay more for those, and the commission has not raised that fee because we're trying to sell cow-calf elk licenses to manage elk. And then similarly with pronghorn. As I just mentioned, the commission's going to take a look at preference point fee adjustments. But again, I think there's a lot of smaller pieces put into a package. This could be one of those pieces of the package that would help. And there is some significant ability to generate revenue with preference points. We sell a lot of them. And we'll be looking at that. We do have the ability to increase the cost of our AIS decals. One discussion I've had with another legislator was about looking at, where we stock pheasants, there's a pheasant management stamp. And so what about where we stock fish? I mean, we have 10 hatcheries and rearing stations around the state that cost a lot of money to operate. And then we take those fish and we stock them in different waters for the public. There's some folks that don't use that. They don't fish for stocked fish. They only fish native streams and places that there's no stocked fish. So maybe that's an idea to look at. And the commission can certainly give that some thought. And then the last one is kind of a unique idea. We've batted it around before, but I call it license insurance. And so right now on an annual basis, we issue more than $1 million in refunds every year. So a person draws a license and it gets September and they have a health issue and they can't come. And we have a process that they can submit their issue to us, and we have a license review board that considers that. And if they qualify under our current regulation, then they're issued a refund. It takes a lot of staff time. We're doing over 500 to 600 license review board cases a year, 800 a year. That's gone up. It's a lot of time. And it's a lot of money in refunds every year. Many of you may have participated in or are aware of trip insurance. So you book a big trip, you spend $5,000 and you buy a little insurance package that if anything goes wrong and you can't go on the trip, then you will receive a refund. So the idea here would be that people could buy license insurance, and then if they could not go, they would, without question, they wouldn't have to qualify medically or anything else. They would receive a refund if they did it by a certain date. They did it early enough that we could reissue the license somewhere else. And if you didn't buy that license insurance, then you don't have that opportunity. We don't know specifically how much revenue that would generate, but I do think it actually might be more user friendly for the public, and also definitely help us efficiency wise, and also help us with a way to offset the refunds we do issue. So, Madam Chair, that's what I wanted to present, and now I am glad to answer any questions that you may have, and I'm trying really hard to keep us on schedule.
Thank you, Director. Representative Larson.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. So I just want to drill down a little bit on the Pittman-Robertson funds. So I guess I have a two-part question. One, are those funds, is that funding source totally tapped out? Or if you have increased expenditures, can you continue to go back for more if your expenditures increase? Two, have you looked at, like, let's say there was a county where they had a shooting range and they wanted to do improvements and they wanted to foot the bill and use Pittman-Robertson funds through you. Would that property then have to transfer to Game and Fish to qualify? How would something like that work? Have you looked at partnerships like that to improve those types of opportunities around the state?
Director.
So, Madam Chair, Representative Larson, so the amount is capped. They use the formula and they say, Wyoming, you're eligible for this much money. And we always use all of ours. We make sure we match that and we use all of our money. As far as if some private entity or, even a nonprofit was to purchase a shooting range and then the commission was to approve an expenditure for the shooting range, there would be a federal nexus for that portion of the money that was the federally government provided. We have the same issue on some of our wildlife habitat management areas now. If they pay part of the bill and we go to sell it, we've got to pay them back for their portion that they invested. So there would be a federal nexus to a shooting range in the scenario you just described.
Any other questions? Representative Western.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Director, the license insurance is certainly an interesting idea. That means, of course, the department is now venturing into the venture of designing an insurance product, which of course can get pretty complicated pretty quickly. I know this is very conceptual, so there's a lot of details you have to work through, but how would that work in the instance of, say, our once in a lifetime opportunities? Because if I understand you correctly, I'm a non-resident from Minnesota, wherever. I pay I think it's $1,200 now for the non-resident special. I buy this product. I make a claim on it. I get refunded the $1,200 or the most of it. But if I apply for mountain goat, sheep, or moose, I have expended that tag. I'm not allocated another one or the opportunity to apply for another one. Is that an accurate understanding, or have you guys worked through that yet?
Director.
Madam Chair, Representative Western. First of all, I use the word insurance to help people understand it's an analogy. We would not be engaged in the insurance business. It would be a flat fee. It would be based on the license fee, and it would be you're basically paying for an opportunity to get a refund for whatever reason you want to get a refund if you do it by a certain date. Yeah, we'd have to do it by a certain date so that we could reallocate the license to somebody else. As far as your second question, this would apply to everything. We wouldn't look at just deer, elk, and antelope. I mean, it could apply to the once in a lifetime as long as they did it by the right date, and we could reallocate that license. You know, they could qualify, receive their refund and their carryover, and then we can give that license to somebody else if we set this up the right way.
Any other questions? I have one on your legislative considerations. Are these in priority order, or are they in low-hanging fruit order, or some combination?
So, Madam Chair, I'm in my little perspective, not being a legislator, I viewed the top two as low-hanging fruit. That may not be the case, but that's certainly the way I looked at it.
Any other questions? Okay, so I think we'll move on to the next thing, and we'll take this up at the end of the day when we do committee directives, if that is okay with the committee. Okay. So moving on to update on wolf management.
Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and ask Meredith Wood, the CFO, to go ahead and do this wolf management update.
Back up now.
So what I wanted to do here, Madam Chair, is really, we actually just, it's very timely. We just released our wolf management report that we do each year. And I was going to give you a quick background and a current status of our wolf population in Wyoming. And then I will specifically address the incident in Daniel very briefly for the committee's benefit. So many of you know this. I apologize in advance for those that this is old hat, but for some of you folks that haven't been engaged in the past, it may be good information for you to have. So Wyoming is committed to, when wolves were delisted, of maintaining at least 10 breeding pairs of wolves and 100 total wolves at the end of the calendar year in this part of Wyoming in the wolf trophy game management area. It's about 15% of the state. That does not include wolves in the national parks, and it does not include wolves on the Wind River Reservation. So it's just in that portion where we essentially manage them as a trophy game species. There's no requirement or commitment to wolves in the other 85% of the state in the area where they're designated by statute as predatory animals. We have continually met these requirements as long as wolves have been delisted. We have the opportunity on an annual basis, I'll talk a little bit more detail on this, to really closely monitor and track the number of wolves that we have. We also had the requirement that in all of Wyoming, we had to maintain 15 breeding pairs and 150 wolves. So that includes the parks and the Wind River Reservation. That's a bar that we've been able to achieve every single year since 2002. We have to ensure, this is our commitment to delist, we have to ensure that adequate regulatory mechanisms are in place, meaning laws and regulations, to ensure that wolf populations will meet or exceed those requirements. And then we also are committed to genetic interchange between wolf subpopulations in the Northern Rocky Mountains. So that's really Idaho, Montana, Wyoming wolves. The one thing I will say about a breeding pair is that it's defined in statute as a breeding pair is one female and one male that successfully raised 2 pups until the end of the calendar year, which is an important definition. So we have a lot of packs. We have more packs than we do breeding pairs, and the reason is because you can't document a breeding pair in every one of those packs if you can't document a male and a female that have 2 pups to the end of the year. Gray wolves were originally listed in 1978, and across the lower 48. They were put at that time into the purview of the Fish and Wildlife Service, and they developed this recovery plan. Their goal was to promote natural recovery in Northwest Montana. Their goal was to reintroduce wolves into Yellowstone National Park as an experimental non-essential population, and also to reintroduce wolves into central Idaho if no natural reproduction was documented by 1992. That was their original plan. Things moved on through the years as wolves were recovered. And then for us specifically, they completed an environmental impact statement in 94 and began their efforts to reintroduce wolves into Yellowstone Park. And as was expected, that was at the time, it was a very controversial decision. There was a lot of contentiousness within the state of Wyoming about what that would look like. And even if and folks argued even if it was a good idea or not. Bottom line, at the end of the day, they were reintroduced in Yellowstone 2 different times, and they very quickly expanded their range and occupied these habitats here in Northwest Wyoming. There was a series of many court cases where wolves were delisted and then listed again, kind of a similar story as the grizzly bear. Ultimately, I'm fast forwarding. I got details in between if anybody's interested in the details in between, but ultimately, after a successful appeal by our state, in April of 2017, wolves were delisted again, and they've been delisted and under Wyoming's management ever since. We've just wrapped up our 10th hunting season, 7 of those consecutively. There was some hunting seasons and then a court decision that listed them, and so a break in hunting seasons. And then the last 7 years, we've been able to manage wolves in the northwest part of the state with hunting at least 352 wolves in 43 packs, including 24 breeding pairs inhabited Wyoming statewide on December 31st of 2023. That's in the parks. That's in the wolf trophy game management area. Of the part we're responsible for, there were 192 wolves at least, and 27 packs, including 17 breeding pairs. That's in the area that we're responsible for, and where we have to meet the commitment of 10 breeding pairs and 100 wolves. This marks 22 years now, that consecutive years that wolves have exceeded, gray wolves have exceeded the recovery criteria in Wyoming, and similarly in Idaho and Montana as well. We monitor these wolf populations very closely so that we can provide information like I just provided you to do our level best to maintain state management of this species. We've got a total of 83 wolves in 25 packs and 5 single wolves that were monitored in the wolf trophy game management area during the last calendar year. And that includes wolves that were collared previously. So we didn't collar all 83 of those in 1 year, but we've got a lot of wolves out there that have collars on, and that's how we're able to monitor this population so closely and continue to prove up on our commitment. The overall mortality rate of wolves was 19.7% of all wolves known to have been alive in the wolf trophy game management area in 2023, which is below the average mortality rate from 2012 to 2022, and it's the lowest recorded since 2011. We've paid, in 2023, we paid $270,000 to compensate livestock producers for livestock that was killed or injured in the wolf trophy game management area. We're not statutorily required to pay for livestock that's depredated outside of the wolf trophy game management area, only inside this portion of the state. And our compensation payments actually declined by over $300,000 from 2014 to 2017, which is a good thing. We had less depredations last year. So there's been some recent actions that the Fish and Wildlife Service has taken that were kind of hard for us even to discern. My bottom line understanding of where they're at is they made a decision. They were petitioned to relist wolves. They issued a not warranted decision, meaning that they're not putting wolves in our state back on the endangered species list. They did find that there is a Western United States gray wolf. It is its own distinct population segment, and it's discrete from Canada. And so the result of that is they're looking at doing another recovery plan for those wolves in the Western US. I believe, as I understand this today, that this does not and will not affect our status in Wyoming. Our status was directed through Congress and also through litigation. And so, but I did meet with the director of the Fish and Wildlife Service, I think it was last week, to discuss this and to ensure I understood her perspective on what this meant, and we're aligned. She does not believe this has any effect on our wolf population or our wolf status, or that status of Montana or Idaho. With that, before I address the incident, Daniel, is there any questions on the current status of our wolf population in Wyoming?
I have just one. You mentioned that you compensate for livestock depredation in the trophy area. In the rest of the state, is there a program that compensates livestock owners if their animals are killed by wolves, bears?
Madam Chair, there has been, but it has not been durable. It's been an allocation from the legislature, from the general fund to the Department of Ag to run a program to do compensation. And there's been years when that compensation has run out, and there's been years when it hasn't all been used. I don't know this past year if they utilized all of their funds or not, but there has been a legislative appropriation for that.
Any other questions?
Madam Chairman.
Oh, Representative Singh.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Director, just to be crystal clear on this, are wolves property of the state of Wyoming?
Director.
Madam Chair, Representative Singh, yes.
Thank you.
We'll go Co-Chairman Schuler.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Just a quick question. How's our status with the wolf compare with Idaho and Montana, some of the other states that have some of the same issues?
Director.
Madam Chair, Madam Co-Chair. So are you talking about population wise? Okay, so yeah, the populations in Idaho and Montana are also robust. And, when I talk to my counterparts in those states, I don't have specific numbers, but I do know that they've been challenged to try to manage wolves down to an objective that folks in Idaho can live with regards to conflict with livestock. But they have more wolf habitat than we do. And so they have more wolves, quite a few more wolves than we do.
Representative Larson.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. So maybe I'm just missing it somewhere, or I can't find it, or maybe it's in rule rather than statute, but where could I find the rule that basically says you can't take an animal alive and like a fish, for example, and put it in a fish tank at your house? Where would I find the restriction on that? Or is there a restriction on something like that?
Director.
Madam Chair, Representative Larson. So there are very specific requirements on the transportation of live fish, and that is in regulation, commission regulation. We can find that and give it, and I'll have that to you before the end of this day. I'll have it to you before lunch, most likely, because I've got people watching. And then, but separately, when you talked about the possession of live wildlife, this is complex. So there in Wyoming, there's a specific statutory provision and then a corresponding regulation that prohibits the possession of a live wolf. It doesn't say live other wildlife or live predatory animal, it's live wolf. And that is what the statute that was in play in the incident that happened in Daniel.
Senator Baldwin.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Just a quick question. You may or may not have a good answer. Do you anticipate, or have you made any preparations for impact from the Colorado release of wolves? Or have you seen any impact? I'm sorry, I'm losing my voice. Have you seen any impacts, or do you anticipate anything, or is there anything in place?
Director.
So, Madam Chair, Senator Baldwin, so we do anticipate there will be wolves that come across the border into Wyoming. The level at which they create conflict with livestock, I don't know, but I don't think it's a matter of if. I do think it's a matter of when. Since those wolves are designated in that part of the state as predatory animals, those local folks can handle those wolves that stray into Wyoming on their own, just like they would if they're having problems with coyote depredation. The wolf in that part of the state has the same status. So, you know, we've actually had cross-border movement of wolves already. I'm not aware of significant livestock depredation because of that. But certainly as that population in Colorado grows, there will be more wolves that move across the border.
Any other questions? Okay, then we'll carry on with
Okay.
the next.
So just, you know, in light of, and I know you'll likely have some public comment here today, in light of the incident that did happen in Daniel, we've issued the department, the governor, we've issued several statements on this, and we've talked about it at our commission meeting. Our commission has made an official statement on this incident. There's been a lot of public interest on all sides, and there's also been a lot of advocacy for changing Wyoming's laws. I think one of the things that's really important for me to say up front is that Sublette County Sheriff's Office and County Attorney have publicly said they are conducting an investigation, and they have, to my knowledge, as of this morning, they have not made a decision on where they're going to go with their investigation. I think it's also important to note that the incident, as we know it, that occurred in Daniel, did not involve hunting, and it was not predator management. It was completely separate. And so as folks have this discussion, I think it's important to stay in that lane, not looking at hunting statutes, not looking at predator management statutes, but looking at other types of laws and regulations that deal with other activities. You know, my advice to the committee is to be thoughtful. There's not an urgent crisis to make a change tomorrow. Sublette County still has to make a decision, and my advice would be to let the dust settle a little bit and allow time for some thoughtful discussion and consideration, rather than take immediate actions to start writing bills today. That'd be my recommendation. And I'm not in any way saying that at some point the legislature shouldn't take a look at that. I think there's probably some opportunities to look at some changes, but my recommendation is that that you not do that here today. If you do, we'll be glad to help in any way we can, because of the complex status of wolves in Wyoming. And some places they're predatory animals, and some places they're trophy game animals. You know, there's probably other entities like the Department of Ag that have to be involved as well. But we'll be glad if the committee, you know, goes down that road to help in any way we can. I have had some good discussions with both the chairwomen about some options. And I do think there are some opportunities. I just don't think that today is the right day to dive into it. I think with that, Madam Chair, I will answer any questions.
Any questions for the director? Okay, then I guess we will move to public comment on this particular topic.
So very quickly, Madam Chair.
Okay.
So Commission Regulation Chapter 10 for the warm-blooded possession of warm-blooded wildlife, Representative Larson, and Chapter 69 for the transportation of live fish.
Does that answer your question? All right, so let's move to public comment. We've allotted 20 minutes for public comment with 2 minutes per person. I do have the sign-up list, and we'll go in that order. So Roy Pack would be the first person. So we'll go Roy Pack, Jillian Marie, Bob Lenka, Jim Magagna, Jess Johnson, Joss Minton, and Randy Slaughter. And if we have time, we will go to Zoom. We have a few people there, but I don't know that we'll have time. So as far as timing goes, I have Representative Larson. And I think how we'll do this maybe is to, maybe he'll put up a white paper when there's 15 seconds left, and put up the orange paper when your time's up, if that works. So we'll give that a roll. So Mr. Pack, if you could, your 2 minutes are starting.
Okay, great. Thank you, Chairman and Representatives, for this opportunity. 2 minutes and not rehash everything. Looking over the management scene, of everybody, the damage take place.
Your microphone and you better. There seems to.
How's that? Okay, great. How's this? A little better if I move away? Okay, great. I think, I mean, I want to offer some solutions here. This is my home state, and I think there's some serious damage control. I don't think you realize the millions of people that are upset by what happened in Daniel. And I'd like to take a proactive approach on providing some solutions to that possibly. One is the report that just came out. It's a great headline: wolf populations up, cattle depredation down. It lacks some of the data. I review a lot of government documents for funding, and that's literally what I do for my life and my career these days. We got a number in there of what the depredation is by wolves. It's 37. Do we have a number in there what the total depredation of cattle is by all causes? It's not there. It's missing. That's a significant epidemiological mishap. I mean, that it's major. The amount of cattle and the amount of sheep and other livestock that have died by other causes. What is that percentage? Nationally, it's 0.2%. 0.2% of all depredation of livestock is by wolves. I think the public needs to know that to change some of the impressions and ideas that they have out there that the wolves are killing every single bit of livestock in the state. I disagree with the director on taking action. And I think I'm going to quote him on something here. How far do you have to go to make a favorable impression on the public and on the people out there that are funding you? And one of the things that he talked about is not taking action right now. And I think there are some simple actions you can take right now, and I think they're necessary. One is taking a look at the predator zone. It's unregulated quotas that can be killed in that. And they really have no way to know how many are actually being killed. The other one is looking at statutes that are coming up, 23-1-103.
So Mr. Pack, your time is up. Thank you.
Okay.
Jillian or Gillian? You'll have to correct my pronunciation. Jillian, thank you. Welcome.
Thank you. Good morning. Is
Good
that
morning.
okay?
So so we'll start your 2 minutes.
Okay. Thank you for taking our comments. Thank you so much. So I come to the topic of wolf. Can you guys hear my heart pounding? I'm sorry. This is so nerve-wracking. So I come to the topic of wolf management, seeing it through really 3 different lenses. One as a mother, one as a former school teacher, and one as a scientific illustrator. The mother and teacher in me cares deeply about the images of animal cruelty that children around the world have seen on this topic and really can never unsee. With the magic of the internet, those images are out there forever. So I think some of these children are being really traumatized and will never forget those wolf eyes staring back at them through their computer, their tablet, their phone. So it cannot be scrubbed from the internet. It's out there for good, for better or worse at this point. The scientific illustrator in me sees this from a scientific perspective. So I'm trained to observe nature and document it with drawings, illustrations, paintings, diagrams. Having worked extensively with wolves and wolf management in Colorado, excuse me, I understand their importance in an ecosystem. I was asked to design a license plate for Colorado of a gray wolf to raise funding that goes directly to ranchers for concrete tools that will help them with non-lethal management. So spotlights, range riders, fence flattery, excuse me, things like that to foster coexistence. So educating the public on non-lethal coexistence has been a really enriching process to be a part of. And I just wonder now for Wyoming, since people around the world are associating Wyoming with torture and wolf abuse, it just seems like an opportunity to switch the focus to education and coexistence. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Marie. Bob Lenka? Welcome, Mr. Lincoln.
Thank you. Good morning. Chairwoman Schuler, Chairwoman Newsom, and members of the Travel, Recreation, Wildlife, and Cultural Resources Committee. My name is Bob Lanka. I've lived in Wyoming since 1982 and ultimately worked for the Wyoming Game and Fish Department for 32 years before retiring in 2018. I currently serve as the 78th president of the Wildlife Society. Founded in 1937, the Wildlife Society is a professional science-based organization for wildlife students and working professionals. It's our American Medical Association. With the remainder of my testimony, I want to highlight a couple of points I sent to you in the letter that I sent on April 19th. The Wildlife Society supports responsible uses of wildlife so long as that use is an appropriate human activity. One of the pillars of the North American model of wildlife conservation is that wildlife should only be killed for legitimate purpose. In this instance, a wolf was killed for frivolous purpose in a manner that, in our view, could never be considered an appropriate human activity. The Wildlife Society supports properly regulated hunting. What happened was inconsistent with what every ethical hunter knows and what every hunter education student is taught. One of their primary responsibilities is to take an animal quickly and humanely in order to minimize suffering. Reading the language in 23.3.306A clearly states the legislature's intent to allow the take of animals defined as predatory animals via many methods. The Wildlife Society suggests the legislature consider a very narrow crafted revision in statutory language so that it expressly forbids purposely running down and running over predatory animals with automotive vehicles, motorized wheeled or over snow vehicles. The word purposely is important here, is not our intent to make a highway accident a criminal offense. So with that, I thank you for your time and the opportunity to speak with you today and for your service to the state of Wyoming. I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Thank you, Mr. Lincoln.
Okay.
Oh. Representative Storr.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Is questions allowed?
Sure.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Linker, for being here. I'm curious if in your capacity as a employee of the Game and Fish, working with the agricultural community and helping us understand how we might differentiate between the agricultural community's need to manage predators and the action that took place and your suggested change in statute.
Mr. Lincoln.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Representative Storr. I'm not sure that I'm the one that's going to suggest statutory language, but I will tell you that the Wildlife Society recognizes that management of predatory animals and other animals is necessary in order to do what needs to be done for agricultural producers. We also are aware that sometimes predatory animals are taken because we're trying to benefit a specific wildlife population. And I would use as an example what was done before black-footed ferrets were brought back to the Pitchfork and the Hog Ranch, where predator control was taking place there in order to give those ferrets a fighting chance. So the Wildlife Society is very much in line with the ability to take predatory animals doing damage to agricultural producers.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Lincoln. Okay, I think we'll move on to Jim Magagna. Mr. Magagna.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. First, I'd like to express our appreciation to the two co-chairs for your engagement with the governor and others as we tracked this issue and attempted to keep a reasonable rein on it as it moves forward. Having said that, my only point today would be to urge you in anything you move forward with at this point to focus not on a solution yet at this point, but on defining the scope of the issue, which I think is so critical because it's been spread so badly. And what we would emphasize that this is not about predator control. This is not about how we manage wolves in Wyoming. As the director pointed out, we've done that very successfully. This is about the inappropriate treatment of a live animal. And we share the concern of others with that inappropriate treatment and stand ready to work with this committee and with others on defining appropriate things that may need to be done in order to discourage and appropriately deal with such inappropriate treatment of animals in the future. We think that's the direction we need to move and not be distracted with opening up Wyoming's successful management plans. With that, I appreciate this opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. McGagden. So Jess Johnson and
we figured we'd save your time and do a co-comment on that. And
that'll be great.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, I'm Jess Johnson with the Wyoming Wildlife Federation.
Allison Crane, Executive Director of Wyoming Wool Growers Association.
And I'll let Allison kick us off.
So just to reiterate what a few other people have said, I mean, this is a Wyoming issue with a very specific Wyoming solution, and that's what we all believe. And as Director Nesbitt said, the management plan works for wolves. So we want to bring everyone to the table, including sportsmen, wildlife, those that are passionate about wildlife, outdoorsmen, and livestock producers, and bring them to the table, create a Wyoming solution, whether that's legislation for addressing the issue, and I'll do that alongside this committee.
And I think one of the things that we really want to reiterate is the need for everybody at this table. You know, the partnership up here that you're seeing now comes from building relationships and getting things right. And that means going slowly. It means having discussions over a beer or whiskey in Wyoming and talking about how we fix this. I think one of the main things is, you know, we look at policy. We don't want to get over specific. We want to hit at what is the actual issue. Where was the gap? And as it's been reiterated, this was not hunting. It was not predator management. So what was this? It was a misabuse, and we do have a gap in policy, and we do need to fix something. But where we get to how we fix that, that does need to come from a table. I don't know if that means a subgroup or, you know, those of us all sitting here helping weigh in. But I do think that we need the experts at the table. We need game and fish. We need the people that are doing the management. We need agriculture. We need sportsmen. We need wildlife enthusiasts, tourism. All of that needs to sit down and figure out how we approach that. And that takes time. You know, good policy does not come from knee-jerk responses. And so I really urge that we sit down and we talk and we bring everybody there, because there's a ton of care in this room. And it's important that we acknowledge that, but that we do not let it make us make hasty decisions.
Thank you. Thank you both, Ms. Johnson and Ms. Crane. Josh Mitten. Welcome.
Welcome, Madam Co-Chair, members of the committee. Josh Mitten, Wyoming Field Manager for the Theodore Roosevelt Conservation Partnership. I'd just like to echo the comments from the previous folks up here. As a organization that represents sportsmen in Wyoming, we agree that the events that happened were appalling and don't represent Wyomingites and don't represent sports people. We encourage you to take a thoughtful, protracted approach at addressing possible solutions to this issue, and also echo that we would like to see the process play out with Sublette County and the law enforcement there in their decision making that they're having. So, with that, I'll yield for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Mitten.
Thanks.
Randy Slaughter. Welcome, Ms. Slaughter.
Thank you. Can you hear me? All right. Yes. Madam Chairman, members of the committee, I apologize for not being completely prepared for this, but having listened to what all of you have said and all the preceding commenters have said, I would like to include my endorsement for something considered not necessarily against hunting, not necessarily opposed, of course, to wildlife management or the concerns of agriculture. This was an ethical problem. And how do you legislate ethics? One thing I have not heard mentioned is something I read recently. The wolves from Colorado were being lured by hunters across the lines into Wyoming and killed there. That's a completely different problem, and yet it's still ethical. I would simply hope that you all can take some time and consideration to how do we control this without penalizing those that have every right to shoot these predators and keep their own cattle safe. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Slaughter. Then we have a few people online. We still have some time. So, so what I'm going to take online are the Wyoming folks first. So there's Dr. Powers from Laramie. Is he online? No. Casey Privadell from Laramie. No. Vicky Marcus from Centennial. Okay. Miss Marcus, if you would join us.
Yes.
So you have 2 minutes.
Okay.
Can you unmute yourself and do your video?
It should be, can you hear me?
I can hear you, but I can't see you.
Oh, okay. I can't, I don't know how to unmute the.
Okay, then we'll just go ahead.
Okay, sorry about
That's
that.
fine. Just go
Okay.
ahead with your comments. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. I have been a property owner in Wyoming for over 25 years. I have a vested interest in this state and the wildlife that attempt to live here. Yote whacking has been going on in this state for some time, which is horrible. This disturbed group of people that partake in this pastime even bring their children along to teach them that life is cheap and killing is fun. In 2019, 5 years ago, a bill was introduced after a disturbing video surfaced of a coyote being whacked. This bill didn't make it out of committee because the legislators feared they would be going down a slippery slope. Fast forward to 2024, and Wyoming has a new poster boy, Cody Roberts. You've gone down the slippery slope in the other direction. Now the state is known worldwide in not so pleasant light. It is time to change. As a stakeholder in this state and an equal owner of the wildlife in this state, I am requesting you to finally take a stand against this psychotic behavior and pass a law that would criminalize the motorized killing of wildlife. I also request you to amend Wyoming's cruelty statutes, confirm that all wildlife are included in the list of protected animals, and that the behaviors exhibited in the Daniel, Wyoming case are prohibited. I think the quicker you make these changes, the quicker this will be behind you, because this time people are not going away. It won't be hidden. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Marcus. Appreciate your time to be with us today. We'll move back to Dr. Powers. Apparently he came online, so. Or she.
Hi, I'm
Dr.
going
Powers,
to
there we
quickly.
go.
I would like
Thanks for
to
joining us.
disagree with what some people have said and say that an atrocity of this magnitude requires a robust and rapid response in order to save face. Banning whacking and the torture of wildlife is something that can be implemented more or less immediately without impacting consumptive users. Acknowledging that the practice of banning and of whacking and torturing wildlife is in fact widespread. It's all over the internet. People brag about it. It was not a one-off incident. Acknowledge that wolf predation of livestock accounts for less than 1% of livestock loss annually. Publicize how much time and money goes into non-lethal management of wolves. and into addressing the other causes of livestock loss. Typically, when people don't want to act, they make a lot of noises about, well, we'll look into, we'll have discussions, let's not rush this, let's not have a knee-jerk reaction. It's pretty much hoping that the public is going to lose interest and move on to the next thing. I would hate to see that happen in this instance. It is certainly urgent to act as quickly as possible on banning whacking, which a majority of Wyoming citizens are in support of, and on prohibiting torture of any wildlife, closing the loophole for so-called predators. Guardian dogs, fences, limiting the use of public lands for grazing, which taxpayers from all 50 states are paying for, assuming the cost of business for Wyoming ranchers with our tax dollars, limiting grazing on public lands so that there's less opportunity for wolf predation or any kind of predation, albeit it's less than 1%, so a non-issue in reality. These are all really helpful steps. And I think engaging with these issues to show good faith and that you're not hoping that people are going to go away and find something else to talk about would be the best way to save face in the short, medium, and long term. Virtually all of Wyoming's—
Dr. Powers, your time is up. Thank you. We have time for two more comments, Liz Holland and Donald O'Toole. Mr. O'Toole?
I'm here.
Okay.
Is it
you
okay
have
for
2
me to go?
minutes.
Okay, thank you very much. Madam
Yep.
Chair, members of the TRW, thank you for an opportunity to speak. My name is Donald O'Toole. I live in Laramie. I don't think we'll see meaningful progress in how the state addresses motorized harassment of native predators until we acknowledge some facts. Multiple entities and people who know better have spun this issue of the Daniel Wolf episode. That includes Wyoming Game and Fish, the Game and Fish Commission, Governor Mark Gordon, and today Mr. Magagna, have each made statements to the effect that the episode in Daniel was tragic, but a one-off. And if it is a one-off, you can sit in your hands. Director Nesvik is in the room with you, or at least he was. There are others amongst the department's leadership who know what goes on with predators across the state, not to mention the wildlife biologists. I urge you to ask them, is mashing predators a thing in rural Wyoming? Because I think it is. It's been going on for years. I'm a retired veterinarian in Albany County. I've heard of this for decades. Years ago, a colleague told me one Friday he was off to harass coyotes by snowmobile on a weekend of fun. There are media reports of coyote mashing in the Cora area. There's a rancher northwest of Pinedale who allows snowmobiles on his property specifically to harass coyotes. We have a statewide problem of recreational abuse of wildlife. They just happen to be predators. Majority Leader Hicks, in his public comments, made heavy weather what to do about coyote mashing. The truth is, it's not that difficult an issue. It just takes 1 or 2 lines to amend our animal cruelty statutes. All you need to do is to write that purposeful harassing, torturing, and killing predators by motorized vehicles is illegal in this state. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. O'Toole. So our last commenter, if not online, so that